Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Deku listened to Bakugou. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The first thing Izuku notices upon regaining consciousness is the pounding in his head. The second is the dull, stinging sensation in his right arm. Opening his eyes comes with a great difficulty, feeling rather sluggish, yet having a strong itch in his head that refuses to go away, that there's something he should remember. Slowly, but surely, all his senses come back to him. The sterile smell that always makes you anxious and want to crawl out of your own skin. Oh, I'm in a hospital, Izuku thinks, but doesn't say, not feeling quite in control of his body just yet. Next came the dryness and metallic taste in his mouth. While uncomfortable, it wasn't overwhelming. When opening his eyes, Izuku was met with the strong fluorescent lights being the only thing to focus on. The rest of his surroundings a blur, almost like his eyes were a camera lens that stubbornly remains out of focus. The overall feeling was that of his senses being turned down in a way that it felt both not enough and too much at the same time. From not receiving enough input and being hyper-focused on whatever little the boy could get his hands on. It's the frustrating feeling of being aware of the itch, but not being to scratch it and make it go away. While trying to focus on anything other than the obnoxious light, Izuku listens intensively to the sound of dripping liquid. The sound itself quiet enough, but within the eerie silence of the hospital room it might as well be played from the speakers at full volume. He looks in the direction of the sound, an IV drip, and upon closer inspection Izuku notices that it's attached to his arm. As the dripping continues, he becomes more irritated, feeling like every single droplet mocks him for getting into this predicament. Trying to voice his discomfort was another matter, however, "Oog" was all he could say, because less is more and the dryness in his throat did not allow Izuku to form full sentences. Izuku called a tired, but full of concern voice from his left, which upon thinking for a second, Izuku recognized to be his mother's. Turning his head in her direction only made him more aware of the pounding in his head, making Izuku hiss at the sensation. "Oh honey, try not to move. The doctor said you got quite a concussion and a broken leg, but it's actually not that bad considering what happened. That's Midoriya and Co for you. Always there when you need her. Always fretting over her only son, understandably so, whenever there's space for her to do so and sometimes even when there isn't." The circles under her eyes, making her look like she hasn't slept in the past 3 days, and the messy bun on her head being enough of a proof. The silence on Izuku's part only made Inko's worry even greater. She looked her son in the eyes, their green dullness contrasting the brightness of the room they were in. "Izuku, do you remember what happened?" She fidgeted in the plastic chair she was currently sitting at, not knowing how to breach the subject of why her son was currently in a hospital. Izuku's mind was whirling. Of course he remembered, how could he not? It was at this point in his life, stuck in a hospital bed with a concussion and a broken leg, when Izuku truly appreciated the wisdom of the words "ignorance is a bliss." Unfortunately, life did not have any bliss in plans for him, as Izuku was now forced to face the consequences of his actions. He was supposed to feel remorse for making his mother worry needlessly, feel anxious about being unconscious for God knows how long and missing school, feel grief about going as far as jumping off the roof of his school partly out of desperation, and partly despite his childhood friend turned bully. Except, Izuku didn't feel any of those things. Truth be told, he felt nothing. While he was aware on some level of the adrenaline pulsing through his veins while falling, of 101 thoughts running through his head, of the burned notebook that is probably still in that pond, soaked beyond a point of saving, he just couldn't force himself to care about any of those things. Izuku wanted nothing more than drift back into the warm and welcoming arms of the unconsciousness, where he didn't have to worry about any of those things. His contemplation regarding the catatonic state of his emotions had to be stopped as Izuku remembered that his mother asked him a question and was patiently awaiting some sort on an answer, so he figured he must have started mumbling. When faced with his mother's face, tired, but full of concern, just like her voice, Izuku found himself with words stuck in his throat and settled for simply nodding to get the message across. She wanted to ask more. He could tell from the way she hunched closer to his bed, her eyes now more alert, attentive, looking ready to take in as much as possible, but he wasn't ready to talk about it. Not now, not ever. Not when he's been told by every single person in his life that his dream to become a hero is just unrealistic. Not when blindly holding on to that dream lead to nothing but bruises, burns, ripped notebooks, and his ever so anxious mother gaining even more reasons to worry. Not when the only way to wake up from that dream and accept the truth was by trying to take his own life. It only confirmed how weak and foolish he is, and no amount of analysis on heroes will ever make up for that. However, Izuku felt that his mother deserved a much better answer, maybe not a full answer, since Izuku himself was unable to fully articulate his thoughts and feelings, but some sort of an answer was due. Twom sorry, not exactly what he was going for, but it was a start. Honey, don't apologize, and Co couldn't hold it in anymore as she burst into tears. I just want to know why. Is Itis at some trouble at school? So some bullies? Or is it my fault? Not, it's not your fault. Don't ever think like that. I was just tired, so tired and hopeless. But it's all right. Oh, Izuku, it's all right because you were all right. I can't become a hero. Never could and never will. It's cancelled. But it's always been your dream. Well, it was stupid. I was stupid. Don't say that about yourself. You can't become a hero without a quirk, and look at me. Not only do I not have a quirk, I'm also weak. So frickin' weak. No wonder all the kids made fun of me. But you know what's the worst part? That it cost me a suicide attempt to finally realize what everyone has been saying for years. Izuku was now panting. Not used to shouting so much, his emotions getting better of him. That's how stupid I am. But it's all right now, because I'm alive. I'm fucking alive, but this dream is not. This dream is dead. Finally, when his rant was over, did Izuku become more aware of his surroundings. First, he noticed his mother crying. Now feeling even worse for lashing out on her when she hasn't wronged him in any way. There was a nurse standing by the door who quickly said something about getting the doctor before scattering away, probably to give Izuku and his mom some privacy and resolve their family drama. He was also very much out of breath and felt even more exhausted than before. However, he felt somewhat light. By admitting all of this out loud, he made it real. It wasn't delivered the way Izuku hoped for, but he got the point across, especially the last part, and while he felt the familiar tightness of disappointment and self-loathing almost suffocating him, he also felt content, sort of. Admitting to himself the unlikeliness of his dream coming true and his own limitations was something that had to be done a long time ago. Izuku by no means felt better, but rather came to accept the truth. Now it was time to try and make things better, though he wasn't sure he had the energy or will to fix everything that's been broken, including himself. I'm sorry, Mom. His point still stands. Midoriya, Izuku's dream is dead. So as you can see from this X-ray, it was a clean break, so it should take about 6 weeks to fully heal. In the meanwhile, you will be transferred to the psychiatric ward, where we can fully monitor your mental health as well. If you or your mother have any concerns, please inform one of our staff members as soon as possible. As soon as Izuku's existential crisis tantrum was over, the nurse came back, this time with a doctor at her side. Dr. Kenko looked like a nice enough man, slightly on the heavier side, in his mid-40s with a rather gentle look in his eyes. If Izuku were to describe him, he'd say that the man gives off a vibe of your favorite uncle, which normally he'd be happy about if it wasn't for all the rumbling. Is this what I'm usually like? Unfortunately, Izuku wasn't able to descend in the vortex of self-reflection as yet again he was expected to participate in the conversation. Now, the nurse will bring you something to eat, and in the meanwhile we shall discuss your care plan. My what now? Your care plan? It's what we're going to do to help you. We will start off with some SSRIs. It's one of the safer drugs with fewer side effects. It should help in stabilizing your moods. But most importantly, a proper therapy is needed. You will have sessions with one of our psychiatrists who specializes in children and adolescent patients. You will meet Dr. Ayashi soon enough, but I can guarantee you that he is. I don't need it. I'm sorry. I said, I don't need it. I don't need to waste my time talking to someone who's only going to tell me things I already know. Izuku, please. The doctors only want what's best for you. The doctors are here for their paycheck, and they literally couldn't give less fucks about me. The doctor cleared his throat, his soft demeanor fading away. Mr. Midoriya, I don't think you fully understand your situation. You have attempted suicide. It is a serious matter, and we are required to perform a psychological evaluation before we can even consider releasing you from the ward. I am aware that a therapy seems like a scary thing and many patients are rather averse to it at first. But I advise you give it a chance, and if you don't like Dr. Ayashi, we can arrange for you to have sessions with another psychiatrist. At this point, the Dr. Kenko reminded Izuku more of a stern father reprimanding his child rather than a chill uncle. Although Izuku can't be sure since his own dad wasn't around long enough for him to know what it's like. Okay was all Izuku could say, because he still had enough decency not to argue with a doctor who within a span of 5 minutes has managed to become somewhat of a temporary father figure to him. Daddy issues, he thought. That's probably why I need therapy. And so the next day Izuku found himself in front of Dr. Ayashi's office, waiting for his evaluation. In all honesty, it felt like waiting for an execution to take place, and the wheelchair he was currently seated in did not help to erase the mental image of an electric chair. There was something rather unsettling about having to see a professional who had the ability to look into your deepest thoughts and take you apart piece by piece. It made Izuku feel strangely vulnerable. And the session hasn't even started yet. However, there was also a part of him that wanted to spill all this darkness he's been holding deep inside, just waiting for some sort of an outlet, which was probably even scarier as Izuku himself has never faced that darkness and was too afraid to face the unknown. His dwelling on the irrational fear of his own disturbing thoughts ended almost as soon as it started when the door to Dr. Iyashi's office opened. Izuku quickly turned his head in the door's direction expecting to see the doctor, but instead found himself faced with another patient, a middle-aged woman with long white hair, which had Izuku slightly confused. Didn't Dr. Iyashi specialize in children and adolescents? Now, Mrs. Todoroki, I'm very happy with how today's session went and I hope we can continue where we left off next week, said a male voice from behind the doors. Oh, it must be Dr. Iyashi, Izuku thought. The tone was rather professional, but still contained a cheerful vibe, which made him feel like the doctor was genuine in what he said. It made Izuku feel slightly relieved as instead of a faceless figure wearing a white coat, his mental image of Dr. Iyashi was replaced with equally vague, nevertheless a more positive one. Finally, the doctor's figure walked out from behind the office door, which Izuku has dubbed the execution room mere 15 minutes ago. Ah, you must, Izuku. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm Dr. Iyashi and I will be conducting your evaluation. Now, how about we go into my office and get started? If Dr. Kenko was the favorite uncle, then Dr. Iyashi was your best friend who you were willing to spill all your secrets to. Or at least that's what Izuku thought best friends did. His only experience with friendship, again, too brief to form any proper expectations. The severe lack of positive people in his life was slightly concerning now that he thought about it. The point being, there was something soothing and relaxing about Dr. Iyashi, which made Izuku feel like opening up to him wouldn't be as bad as he originally anticipated. Not sure what to say to the man who was about to pry his mind open, Izuku simply nodded and allowed himself to be wheeled into the doctor's office. Once Izuku found himself in the office, he looked everywhere, yet nowhere in particular, trying desperately to focus on anything other than what was about to happen. So Izuku, before we start, I will let you know that everything you say in this room is confidential, and while I won't share any details of our conversations, I will need to write up a general summary of our sessions to go with your medical file, which will help me in conducting your evaluation. Is that all right with you? Yes, sir. Now, you don't have to be so formal. You can call me Shin if you prefer. I find that most of my patients are more comfortable talking once they're on a first-name basis with me. Okay, Shin. Izuku was tense. He didn't exactly know what to expect, feeling like every single part of him, from the short, flat answer he given, to the way he twitched under the doctor's eyes, were being analyzed and used to give 101 facts away about Izuku, half of which he probably didn't even know himself. Maybe this was Shin's quirk. It must be very useful in his field of work, he thought. So tell me, how are you feeling? I don't know. That's okay. Let's start off with something easier then. What are you thinking? I think that I'm like an animal waiting to be dissected by your mind-reading quirk. My what? I don't have that kind of quirk, unfortunately. It's a shame though, let me tell you. It would have made my work 10 times easier. He then laughed, probably wanting to disperse the awkward atmosphere, though Izuku did not make it any easier. Okay then, now that we cleared that up, let's get started. Just tell me anything, literally anything that comes to your mind, and let's go from there. Anything, Izuku thought. That's not exactly helpful. Given no boundaries is even more stressful as it gives you infinite choices, something he wasn't really used to, as his world up until now revolved around standardized tests with only one correct answer. Daddy issues, his mouth ever so helpfully provided without the brain's input. Izuku could see the doctor losing his composure for about a fraction of a second before regaining his professionalism once again. But in all honesty, he couldn't care less. Daddy issues, you say? Doctor, Kenko has mentioned your mother visiting, but nothing about your father. You two must have a rather strained relationship, I presume. No, the issue is that he's not even around to give me any daddy issues. The doctor quickly wrote down whatever observation he made about Izuku before resuming the conversation. So would you say that the lack of a father figure has negatively impacted your life? I don't know. He wasn't here to fuck anything up for me, so I guess not. I often see that the patients who live in separated families have found some other adult who they see as their role model in place of an absent parent. Is there someone like that in your life? Someone you really admire, look up to, possibly imitate? Now that gave Izuku something that can only be described as war flashbacks. Might as well go down the lane of dead dreams. Yeah, all might. It was again brief, but his voice betrayed more emotions in that one sentence than during his entire stay in the hospital so far. The obvious tune of melancholy mixed in with the dull tone of regret and the long-faded admiration. I always wanted to be a hero like him, to be able to save everyone with a smile on my face, he added, unable to look Shin in the eyes. Is that no longer the case? No. And why is that? Why? Izuku thought while looking out through the window, because why bother wishing for something that is impossible? Why bother hurting, when deep down you know that it will all amount to nothing? Because I was stupid. I kept deceiving myself, telling myself that if I just work hard enough I could make it. It was a lie. I lied to myself every day, because I was too afraid of facing the truth. But you know, ultimately the truth came back to bite me in the ass, and that's how I ended up here. Is this what you thought about when you decided to jump off the building? If you believe they're holding your quirk over in the next world, you should just dive off the rooftop, he said. What? Who said that? I didn't believe him. The guy wants to be a hero and he has a pretty good chance, you know. Amazing quirk, good grades. But his personality is anything but heroic, Izuku chuckled, remembering Kaken's explosive behavior. It was empty, holding no hint of amusement whatsoever, but I decided to jump off anyway, just to spite him. Though I guess I was also desperate. I felt so hopeless, not knowing what to do with myself, and for a split of second, jumping off seemed like a good idea. He was now sobbing, tears quietly falling, still not facing the man to whom he was spilling his sorry excuse of a tragic backstory, and that split of second was enough. Izuku, what you've just told me is very important. If all of this was caused by extreme bullying, there's something that can be done about it. Does the school know? Sure they do, they just don't care. You'd be surprised how flawlessly it all works out when there's one person to torment and take out their frustrations on, so that everyone else can go on with their everyday lives like the little, pathetic people they are. There was a heavy silence between them, interrupted only by the doctor's scribbling in his journal. The whole session was going downhill from the very start, and Izuku just wanted to be done with it. If this is how sessions with a psychiatrist usually look like, then Izuku was dreading the next 6 weeks of his life. It's been almost a week since Izuku's admission to the psychiatric ward. Truth being told, he's bored to death, as there's only so much time one can spend doing homework that's been brought to you by one of the teachers, because none of his classmates have expressed the desire to visit him. Fuck them. Usually he'd spend every free minute of his time filling up his notes on heroes, but that's a sore spot at the moment for obvious reason, which unfortunately leaves him with way too much time to think. And thinking is bad. It's scary how the lack outside stimuli forces him to face all these thoughts that he didn't even know existed. He kept thinking about Kaken and how he must feel right now after everything that have happened. But what really terrified Izuku was the dark little voice that accompanied all his thoughts. I hope he suffocates in his own guilt. He should suffer as well. He doesn't deserve to be a hero, said the vengeful voice. While Izuku was never one to wish ill upon a person, he couldn't help but agree with the voice, which at some point he would have to acknowledge as his own. It's natural, said Shin. During their previous session, it's normal to feel spite towards a person who has wronged you, especially after everything that this Kaken said and done to you. So there's no reason to feel bad about your feelings. Easier said than done. There were many things that needed to be addressed according to Shin, especially when it came to his dysfunctional facade of a friendship with Kaken. Izuku wasn't quite ready to unpack this particular box that's embedded with shards of whatever was left of his self-esteem, decorated with numerous scorch marks, filled with the cold, penetrating touch of fear and the slow, burning pressure of quiet resentment, that's all beautifully packaged in the shadow of adoration. It was all too much, but thinking about the possibility of resolution to this particular childhood nightmare left him feeling rather empty. So instead, Izuku decided to take it one step at a time and leave it all to the Izuku of tomorrow. Not the best decision of his life, but he couldn't be bothered to do anything about it. His mom will visit him later with promised Katsuden after his complaint about the hospital food. It wasn't that bad, it just wasn't his mother cooking. Although in all honesty he wasn't in the mood that allowed him to enjoy food. Not even his all-time favorite Katsuden. For now though, all he wanted to do was find something to occupy his time. Izuku considered asking one of the nurses to wheel him outside to get some fresh air, but he didn't want to trouble them. They're probably already very busy, was his first thought. I can't be bothered to being a close second. Is this how he was going to spend most of his time here, confined in a hospital room, with a deafening silence as his only companion? A knock on the door answered the question for him. Midoriya. It's dinner time, said one of the nurses as she walked in. She was a rather tall woman with 4 arms, allowing her to hold the tray with 2 of her hands, a patient's chart in the third, leaving the fourth to open the door. How convenient. It must be nice to have an extra pair of hands to do the work, he thought. It really is. Or said, well, that was awkward. He was already stammering out, trying to apologize for verbalizing his thoughts so obnoxiously. But the nurse just smiled and waved at him dismissively. It's fine, don't worry about it. Anyway, here's your dinner, enjoy. Actually, I am sorry to trouble you, but my mom will come over later with Katsuden, so I'd rather not eat now. I'm sorry that you came here for nothing. Oh, not a problem. But if you get hungry, just ring the bell and I can reheat it for you later if you want. Is that everything? And no, I mean, yes, would it be too much trouble to wheel me out of here for a bit, just to get some fresh air? 10 minutes later, Izuku found himself at the hospital's rooftop, with the nice, 4-armed nurse at his side. The roof was sectioned off with a high fence. It had a few benches for the patients to sit on and relax. The area was mostly used by those who smoke or want to relax and enjoy a sunny day. It was already 7 p.m. though, so there wasn't much sun to enjoy. Nonetheless, Izuku appreciated the calm chill of the evening air. The calm solitude was quickly interrupted by the revelation that he wasn't in fact alone. A woman, who Izuku immediately recognized as Mrs. Todoroki from his previous session with Shin, was sitting on one of the benches in the faraway corner of the enclosed roof. Her long, white hair and the distant look in her eyes made her seem more like a ghost, worn away by the passage of time, but unable to move on. Izuku didn't want to pry. It would be rude after all, but he could at least admit to himself that he was very curious as to why Mrs. Todoroki was here. What was it that made her break and land in this place? Izuku's curiosity once again got better of him as he started to wheel himself in the woman's direction. The nurse did not follow after him, seemingly content to keep an eye on him from the distance. "What did you do?" he said, without looking the woman in the eye, and momentarily cringed at his own choice of words. The way he said it was accusatory, like he wanted to hear a confession of a horrible crime rather than a personal story of falling victim to your own mind, both of which were very much not Izuku's business. Hence the surprise when Mrs. Todoroki actually answered him. "I poured boiling water on my child's face as a result of a mental breakdown, you." Her tone was resigned, with a hint of self-loathing, as if every morning when she had to face her own reflection in the mirror it told her of all the horrible things she did. She did not look him in the eyes either. "I guess I got tired of being bullied for existing without a quirk, so I took a dive off the roof." Izuku then motioned to his cast. Didn't work out, obviously. He was surprised to hear the woman next to him laugh. It held no malice, or even a hint of amusement. It was a quiet, sad laugh, the kind that you hear in a situation where there's nothing else one can do other than laugh at their own misery. Just as Izuku was about to continue the conversation, the nurse called to him, holding a pager in one of her 4 hands. "Midoriya, I just got a call from the reception. Your mother is here. Should I take you back in to see her?" "Right, he forgot about that." "Oh, yes please. Let's talk again sometime." "I'd love to." Just as Izuku was being taken back to his room, he thought again about Mrs. Todoroki, and while it might be the lonely atmosphere of the hospital getting to him, Izuku believed that maybe, just maybe, he has found a friend in her. He was looking forward to having someone besides Shin and his mother to talk to. Speaking of which, his mother's Katsuden was waiting. Izuku smiled to himself for the first time in what seemed like eternity. The days spent in the hospital might not be so bleak from now on. "We used to be really good friends when we were little, always playing together, pretending to be heroes, admiring All Might. We were practically inseparable." Izuku smiled fondly upon recalling some of his only pleasant memories that were brought to him by the very person who later became his tormentor. Kaken always stood out from other kids, always the smartest, the loudest, the most confident. The teachers always praised him. The kids always admired him, myself included. Kaken was just so amazing at everything. And as a kid I looked up to him. He was the leader and I followed after him. That's kinda how our friendship worked. It wasn't perfect, but it was the happiest time of my life. Izuku was currently sitting in Shin's office and spilling his sorry excuse of a backstory to him, because it's their 3rd session, so he might as well get a bit personal. "So when Kaken's quirk manifested, but mine didn't, things went downhill so to say. And now I'm here," he said, voice full of remorse as he gestured to himself and then to Shin. For the most part, the doctor's face remained neutral, not giving away a hint of his thoughts. Perhaps the lack of visible reaction or judgment is what allowed Izuku to open up so easily. Or perhaps it might be Shin's quirk. He still hasn't figured out what it is and made it his little goal to try and find out the mystery that is Shin's quirk. As much as it was Shin's job to observe Izuku during their sessions and uncover what lies deep inside his mind, Izuku was quite an observer himself if his were not talking about it, notebooks or anything to go by. Being analyzed by the psychiatrist always left him feeling vulnerable. So in his mind he concluded that observing and analyzing Shin would give him a bit of an advantage behind the closed doors of the doctor's office and make him feel a bit stronger. After all, knowledge is power, as they say. So far Izuku hasn't observed much given the doctor's god-tier poker face. However, every now and then when talking about the mistreatment he received due to his quirklessness, Shin's face becomes overshadowed by his distaste for a couple of seconds before rewinding back to the masquerade of professionalism. One could say that it's a sign of his sympathetic nature. However, his emotional display wasn't aimed at Izuku, that much is clear. If anything, it was a slip, meaning that whatever Izuku said must have struck a chord within Shin enough to make him show emotion within the sterile, professional environment. Izuku is not sure what that means yet, but he'll find out soon enough. Finally, after remaining silent for most of the session, Shin looks up from his clipboard, locking his eyes with Izuku, looking ready to throw some smart-sounding Freudian analogy. Izuku thinks, except it wasn't that. "From what I see, your early childhood was probably the best time of your life, understandably so. But what that means is you're desperately holding on to the things from the past. You've been holding on to a sliver of hope that things could go back to the way they were before with this Kaken, which contributed to the abuse on his part. I see this often in victims of abuse, the cycle of forgiving and putting up with the tormentor's behavior, except it doesn't do any good. That old label of a childhood friend is what stops you from accepting the way things are. You have to understand that while it is true that Kaken was a good friend and you've made many good memories, That is no longer the case. People can change, often for worse, and you don't have to hold on to the people who hurt you. It hit much closer than Izuku would have liked. Wow, what an impressive word vomit, he said, because right now he felt like his insides were exposed. And sarcasm seemed like a good deflection from the metaphorical guts spilling out of his mind. Izuku, take this seriously for once. Izuku, take this sir IOUSLY4 on CE. Shin does not look impressed. Though someone's in trouble, that's me, I'm in trouble. I don't know why I said that. At that, Shin stands up, clearly out of patience. Izuku wonders if he always runs out of patience this quickly or if it's just with Izuku. You know what? I was hoping you could cooperate with me and that I could help you like a good psychiatrist I'm trying to be. I really was. But if all you contribute to our sessions are snarky comments, I guess I should drop the professional approach or I'll never get to you. Oh, you do get to me. Quite a bit actually. Hence the snarky comments, defense mechanism and all that. Alright then, let me be brutally honest with you. You admire Kaken for whatever fucking reason. He might have some admirable qualities. That's fine, but at this point Shin is standing over Izuku in an aggressive I care about you manner. That does not excuse his behavior. He hurt you, he humiliated you, and I'm sorry that he did all of this to you, but you have to face your repressed rage that should have been directed at him all this time. Admiration and hatred are not mutually exclusive states. So repeat after me. Kaken is a piece of shit. He chanted with fists raised in the air. Kaken is a piece of shit. Louder, I can't hear you. Kaken is a piece of shit. Good. So, Izuku started, trying to slowly break the painful silence. That wasn't very professional of me, sorry about that. Shin suddenly bursted out, clearly embarrassed by his own earlier behavior. Don't apologize. It was the greatest thing that has happened to me since being admitted to this nut house, replied Izuku with a small, but genuine smile that marred his face. Still, such outbursts on my part are unbecoming of a doctor. I have dealt with more difficult patients than you in the past and still managed, said the doctor, quickly reverting back to his professional stance. That means I'm special. Don't get cocky, Izuku. Thank you. Turning around, Shin looked at his patient, face of a poster child for confusion. Really? Thank you. That's exactly what I needed. To get all of this shouted into my head, since I never allowed myself to say or think those things. So I'd rather have you be as unprofessional as possible if it can help me. Sure, but don't tell anyone, or I might just lose my license, replied Shin, chuckling to himself. Their session unfortunately came to an end. Shin had to attend other patients and Izuku had not much to do, to be honest. He was hoping to maybe catch Mrs. Todoroki and have another chat with her, since he has found the woman's company to be quite pleasant. His wish came true when, upon being wheeled out of the office, he spotted the white-haired woman sitting in a chair next to the office. Mrs. Todoroki, I didn't know you were seeing Shin after me. Oh no, I already saw him today. I was actually hoping to whisk you away for a little chat, unless you have something better to do. You know I don't, said Izuku. So who is this Kaken and why is he a piece of shit? Well shit, so a notebook, Izuku said, his face portraying both confusion and distaste at the offending object he currently held in his hands. He looked up at Shin hoping for some sort of an answer. Yes, a notebook, replied the doctor, aware of his patient's internal turmoil, but not keen to address it just yet. But why? It was their fourth session, after their last fiasco, which they made a silent promise not to talk about. Shin seemed more determined than ever to help Izuku get better. So when the session began and Shin simply handed Izuku an empty notebook with a smile on his face, it left Izuku confused to say the least. Like going into an art gallery, seeing a blank canvas and wondering why it's called art in the first place. I want to know what's inside your head, and I mean really deep in. Izuku stopped giggling. Now's not the time for that's what she said, shouted the doctor. Anyway, there's only so much we can achieve during our sessions, so I thought about a notebook, as sometimes it's hard to articulate your thoughts and feelings into a coherent verbal response. So with this you can write anything that comes to your mind, anything that you feel, no matter how chaotic or nonsensical it may seem at the time. Shin finished his little speech full of excitement, animatedly gesturing his hands while looking at Izuku, hoping to see some form of approval from the boy. Instead, he was met with a deadpan look accompanied by an equally deadpan response. So a diary. What am I, a 14-year-old girl looking for a safe place to write her feelings alongside with cheesy self-insert One Direction fanfiction. Izuku, you are 14. Don't ruin it, Shin replied Izuku, again with the deadpan tone, which he noticed always gets on the other's nerves. Slowly but surely, Izuku started noticing more things about the psychiatrist. Or rather, the man in question started to show more of himself. And so he's shown how much he cares about Izuku through his lost composure that exposed the interior of a mad dedication and voiced the worries of a worn-out, but nevertheless a man on a mission. He cares with his whole being, more than he should. So passionate, Izuku thinks, not fully knowing what to do with that information other than to empathize and mourn quietly for his lost love. That is hero analysis for the future. He then looks down at the notebook in his hands. It's not hero analysis, but it will have to do. Having somewhere to accumulate his brain vomit. Even if it's not hero-related, it should give him back some resemblance of the everyday melancholy. Today's session was over far quicker than Izuku would have liked, to his own surprise. While at first he dreaded the appointments, he now looked forward to them, as Shin was the only person Izuku could spill his darkest, most complex thoughts to without any fears. Izuku found himself back within the confines of his hospital room, books and notes taking up every free surface. It almost felt like home, if it wasn't for the lack of All Might posters and action figures, which he was actually grateful for. He knows that his mother wouldn't take down the posters during his absence. Having to go inside Izuku's room to retrieve all of his things must have been enough of a reminder as to what caused her son so much pain in the first place. Not wanting to think about having to confront the All Might convention known as his bedroom, Izuku opened the notebook he received from Shin. It was an ordinary notebook. The pages were flimsy. The cover was a simple cream color, just like the ones he used. The boy stared down at the blank page for what seemed like hours, and for the life of him he couldn't figure out what to write, which was never a problem before. Izuku looked to his left. The stack of notebooks his mum must have brought in along with everything else, all the pages filled with paragraphs and diagrams of analyzing various heroes' quirks. 13 volumes, no, 12 he reminded himself, as the last one was burned and soaked in his school's koi pond. 12 notebooks worth of information and speculations about other people, yet he couldn't write a single thought of his own down on the damn page. Burned out and drowning. Just like that notebook, Izuku said, to no one in particular, while continuing to stare at the offending blankness of the page. Just as Izuku was about to give in to his frustrations and throw the damn thing out of the window, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," he said, suddenly remembering about this thing called decency, which includes, but is not limited to, not throwing things out of the window when other people are watching. Fuck decency. Lo and behold comes in his favorite homeroom teacher to deliver the homework. "Hi Midoriya, I got your homework. How are you doing today?" he says with far too much enthusiasm to counteract the coldness he's met with whenever he's visiting Izuku. It's not like he hates the teacher in particular, or so he tells himself, but there's always a persistent feeling of resentment at the back of his mind, which for the most part he refused to acknowledge. That is until his sessions with Shin, where he was advised to quote his psychiatrist, "Stop giving a fuck and just prioritize yourself for once," which apparently also means being honest with oneself regarding the internal levels of salt, as well as learning that those feelings aren't wrong. And so Izuku finds himself giving the teacher a cold shoulder as a payback of some sorts, because while he's already established that bakugou is the source of all the evil in his little world, that does not excuse the teacher's lack of intervention, just standing by the sides and witnessing the bullying taking place. What a pathetic man, he thought. "Oh, you know, due to unfortunate circumstances I am alive," Izuku finally answers, his voice coated with excess sugar and malice, looking his teacher straight in the eye, challenging him. He takes some form of twisted joy from watching the man in question look away, discomfort obvious in his posture, not knowing what to do with the implications of Izuku's words. He's not quite ready to let the teacher off the hook just yet. He's having too much fun, given how little there is to entertain him here. Izuku wants to prolong it, but how? He questioned while looking around the room. Actually, Izuku begins, startling the teacher, who looked ready to just dump the homework and make a dash for the door. "I think I might have left one of my notebooks in school. It had number 13 on it. If it's not too much trouble, do you think you could bring it to me along with the homework tomorrow?" he asks, trying to keep his voice steady and free of any mockery, lulling the man into a false sense of safety. "Oh, I'm afraid there wasn't such notebook in your desk when I checked last time," replied the teacher, thrown off guard by the only way he could describe it as his innocent tone his student spoke with. A drastic change after becoming so familiar with the sarcastic and aggressive remarks that greet him on a regular basis. "It wasn't in my desk." "Where is it then?" "Kaken will know where it is, so why don't you ask him?" "And the bomb has been dropped." Izuku further tilts his head while maintaining the most "I'm oblivious to your discomfort" face he's able to pull off. By this point the teacher looks like he wants nothing more than to disintegrate if it means not having to face the consequences of his actions, or lack of thereof. "Perfect. I will see what I can do," he replies, not knowing how else to end this conversation and escape the uncomfortable position he's put in. "I'm sure you will. I'm angry. At myself. At Kaken. At the school. At the whole world. At my father. I'm angry. I feel powerless. I want to fight back. I want to be better." The page is no longer blank. It's not much, but it's something. Izuku has found himself in an unfortunate predicament, to say the least. Because of the said predicament, he's now experiencing a lot of feelings, which is quite an unwelcoming contrast to the medically upkept apathy that Izuku has grown to find security in. To his right, the homeroom teacher, back again inside the clinical cage Izuku calls his room, looking even more uncomfortable than last time if that's even possible. To his left, his mother, none the wiser as she looks back and forth between her son and the source of his predicament. To his right again, the source of said predicament, the burned notebook, now also decorated in splashes of what Izuku presumes is his blood from when he fell and hit the ground, held tightly in the teacher's shaking hands. It's a lot to process, a sight quite gruesome in itself, with even more gruesome memories attached to it. The guy has guts, Izuku will give him that, to bring the physical evidence of his long-standing abuse straight to the victim himself, just like he asked, albeit only half seriously, in all of his cowardice to confront his star student about the consequences of his actions. The exchange undoubtedly uncomfortable for both of them, and Izuku can't find it within himself to enjoy his indirect tormenting. Because his mother is here, and just by looking at her face he can spot many questions, speculations, and most notably self-loathing. She doesn't need to say a thing for Izuku to know that right now her mind is a spiderweb, intertwined with the thoughts of how everything is her fault, how her son's suffering could have been prevented if only she tried a bit harder, encouraged him a bit more, fussed a little less, and how familiar those burn marks looked. The sparkle of recognition on Inko's face only added the fuel to Izuku's burning anxiety, the flame eating away, destroying whatever sense of peace he managed to make for himself in those weeks at the hospital, the same way Bakugo's explosions destroyed the frail paper of his notebook. Izuku, his mother, spoke slowly, but with purpose, her eyes not leaving the notebook for a second. What is the meaning of this? Ooh, this is bad, very bad. Oh my, it's one of my notebooks that I left in school, yes. And I asked the teacher T to bring it to me, B, but it's covered in blood from my fall, but it's alright, it's still legible. Oh God, he was panicking. This won't end well. He wanted to play dumb for as long as possible, but he knows that the elephant in the room can only remain untouched for so long. It was that Katsuki boy, wasn't it? His mother said, already knowing the answer. Her son's silence and the teacher's look of shame confirming her suspicions. I'm sore. Don't you dare apologizing to me for something like this. If anything, he should come and apologize to you. And you, she continues, pointing accusingly at the teacher, you allowed this to happen. It's your damn job to look after your students and protect them. Clearly you must have known my son was getting bullied and didn't do anything about it. The teacher panicked, quickly trying to defend himself. Ma'am, I assure you that I was unaware of the scale of all this. While it was clear that there has been some bad blood between your son and Bakugo, I didn't know of the extent of bullying until this incident, and Midoriya himself has never reported the bullying. Oh, so you're saying that just because he didn't report it, that made it okay to turn a blind eye? Mom, Izuku. Their screams were soon overshadowed by the silence, which spoke volumes above their voices yet left many questions hanging from the elephant's trunk. Finally the mother broke the silence and looked at her son, eyes full of love and grief. I'm not mad at you, if that's what you're thinking. She spoke with tears in her eyes. I just want to know, why didn't you tell me? Why indeed? Izuku thought about it often over the years. Part of it had to do with his maniac-like tendency to avoid troubling others, including his own mother who already worried so much about him. It just didn't seem fair to spring even more things on her shoulders, the bullying over his quirkless status already taking a big toll on both of them. Another part had to do with his largely misplaced idolization of Bakugo, fearing that by reporting the abuse he'd permanently stain his tormentor's record, which would result in destroying Bakugo's dream of being a hero, because UA would never accept a bully with a record into their school no matter how well he would have done on the entrance exam. There's also his mother's everlasting friendship with the Bakugas, but that's another can of worms that H doesn't want to touch. Now, that was old Izuku's way of thinking. And the old Izuku is dead now, leaving the very angry and petty Izuku, who right now is tempted to do what his old self was afraid of doing. After all, it's not like Bakugo was ever considerate of his dreams, feelings, or even his life, so yeah, fuck him to be honest. And he's overthinking again. I didn't want to worry you any more than I already do, he says in the end, because it's true. It might not even be a scratch to the surface of everything he feels at the moment, but it's a simple truth. I'm going to have a talk with his parents, said Inko with renewed fire and tears in her eyes as she opened her arms and engulfed her son in a hug. I wouldn't expect any less, replied Izuku, slowly but surely returning the hug. I wish I had said it sooner, but everything's going to be all right, she whispered in hopes to reassure her son. Why? Because you are here, followed Izuku with a humorless laugh. Ahem. The mother and son both turned around in the direction of the sound, their eyes landing on the teacher, who looked about as awkward as they both felt right now. Oh, you're still here. I am angry. I want Kaken to suffer. I do not want to go out of my way to torture him. That would make me just as bad as him. I want him to regret, but I do not want to forgive. I want him to suffer in silence. Kaken is a piece of shit. Well, that should do it, said Izuku, looking down at his notebook. He has taken to writing bits and pieces in the new notebook Shin gave him relatively quickly. It helps him sort out his thoughts, and he hopes to make use of it and discuss some of the things he wrote during next session. Right now, he'd much rather think about his next session with the friendly, albeit eccentric psychiatrist. Tomorrow is a big day. He's going to see Kaken. All I'm saying is, next time he comes over, we grab a couple of those buckets, fill them with water, and drown the bitch into submission, exclaimed Izuku, while excitedly pointing to the empty buckets in the corridor that were left there by a janitor. Izuku, no, just no, said Mrs. Todoroki with the exhaustion of a person who has listened through 101 plans on how to torture her husband. You never like any of my plans, replied Izuku. Because they're not plans, they're random impulses of vandalism and violent behavior, she continued. Besides, not that I don't enjoy your company, but aren't you supposed to meet with piece of shit, or whatever his name was? How did you? It's a small word, honey. The word gets round quickly, interrupted Mrs. Todoroki while looking pointedly at the four-armed nurse, who was currently pretending to be busy writing something in her clipboard and holding the handles of Izuku's wheelchair. TCH, typical, scoffed Izuku. Now, going back to the topic, yes, he was going to meet piece of shit today. The decision was made by his mother, who had gone to the Bakuga's house the previous day and told them about their son's actions in hopes of resolving the situation despite the strain it would inevitably put on their friendship. The adults have decided that the best thing to do would be to all go to the hospital and talk things out, to which Izuku's initial reaction was not today, Satan. But not much could be done on his side to avoid this train wreck. And here he was now, in the common room, killing time with some good old escapism, focusing on all the different ways to torture Mrs. Todoroki's shitty husband, rather than the ticking clock on the wall above him, mocking him, playing the role of a countdown to the start of what he calls the bakugou shitshow. The sleep deprivation from his meds was definitely not helping. This was going to be a long fucking day, so it's starting soon, huh? The bakugou shitshow, said Shin as he seemingly materialized out of thin air, rubbing his hands in a mischievous manner. You've read my journal, replied the boy in a cold, flat tone that the doctor hated so much. Honestly, is there no such thing as privacy in this loony bin? And you've read my medical notes about your case, which, may I remind you, are for medical staff only, retaliated the doctor, his unwillingness to put up with Izuku's shit at this point very apparent in his voice. He then turned to the nurse and motioned towards the handles of his patient's wheelchair. Do you mind if I borrow this little gremlin for a second? Fuck you, interrupted Izuku. See, a little gremlin right here, sneered Shin. He then grabbed the handles and wordlessly started to wheel Izuku out of the common room in the direction of his office as Mrs. Todoroki and the nurse waved them goodbye. So, you're seeing bakugou today, aren't you? Yep. Are you mentally ready for it? Fuck no. Thought so. Which is why we're going to have a little chat now, said the doctor as he reached their destination. Once inside the confines of Shin's office, the doctor has dropped his cheeky facade in favor of the more uncommon, nevertheless much needed, that of a professional. Tell me, Izuku, how do you feel about meeting bakugou? Asked Shin, hoping to go straight to the topic, but leaving the question open enough for his patient. It's a lot of, started Izuku, not yet knowing how to articulate all of the complex feelings swirling together in his psyche into some sort of a coherent answer. Oog. He finished, voice full of helplessness, his posture speaking I don't know, which is still more than he managed to say out loud. Okay, that's something, replied the doctor, a bit disappointed in the lack of coherent response. I'm sorry, it's just a lot. Honestly, I don't know what to expect. He has way too much pride to apologize, although our parents will be there, so he'll probably try to behave more decent with them around. But even if he does apologize, do I want to hear it? Is it going to change anything? Asked Izuku, not expecting an answer. You know, my dream of being a hero is dead, and I'm all right with that. I felt like I was on a good path of making peace with myself about that fact. Like one day I could look back on it and think fondly of it as an oh, every kid wanted to be a hero and save people and not be bitter about it, continued the boy, his fists clenched, the frustration in his voice growing every second, like a volcano, waiting to erupt. But he ruined it for me, he spat, full of venom. In what way did he ruin it for you? Prompted the doctor. To me, a hero was someone who could always save everyone, someone who could always make you feel relief upon their arrival no matter how bad the situation was. And Kaken, he sees anything but that. Having to see him will just remind me of this dream, of all the heroic qualities I aspired for and couldn't reach, and how someone like him, who only knows how to hurt others, will be able to reach that dream and ruin it. He will take everything it takes to be a hero and ruin it, screamed Izuku, breathing labored as he became overtaken by his frustration and helplessness. The doctor did not grace Izuku's outburst with much of a reaction beyond widening his eyes ever so slightly before looking back down to write some notes, already used to such behavior on his patient's part. It tells him a lot about the boy's repressed rage, caused by what he suspects is a mix of admiration, envy, and rather justifiable bitterness, which Izuku himself seems to be in denial of. Speaking of, as the boy slowly regained his breath, his face morphed into one full of fear rather than anger as he became aware of his surroundings, the laughing clock, and the inevitable bakugou shicho that's just around the corner. What would I even say to him when I see him? Asked Izuku, eyes full of panic. I think everything you said just now, replied Shin. He then stood up from his chair and started to wheel Izuku out of his office, in the direction of his hospital room, the atmosphere between them clear from any traces of Izuku's outburst. Do you want me to be in the room with you for moral support? Or do you want me to wait outside? I think I want you to be there with me. That's fine then. Let's get this shitshow started. Hey, that's my line. Soon they have found themselves back in Izuku's room, who was hoisted up back onto the bed with the help of one of the nurses, his leg elevated like when he first woke up. Shin was keeping himself busy in the corner by reading through Izuku's hero notebooks, his face solemn, but eyes full of wonder. It was a face Izuku has never seen before, but he wasn't going to ask about it now, not when the peace within the room was nothing more than a bubble ready to burst any minute. Just because he was expecting it did not mean he was prepared, so when the door opened, Izuku's attention was drawn instantly. Izuku looked like shit, he knew that much. The bags under his eyes told the tales of sleepless nights spent on nothing but staring at the piles upon piles of notebooks, never to be read again. His hair was a mess, like a bird's nest, nothing unusual, except it was longer, the extra length swirling at the sides. On his face, the proof on an inevitable passage of time. Has it really been a month? Well, here goes nothing. He looked like shit, and he wasn't going to pretend any different. He didn't know what to expect when Kaken made an entrance. But it certainly wasn't for his childhood friend Tormentor's face to mirror the misery he felt. Instead of the usual scowl matched with the condescending look, it made him somewhat angry. A lot things made him angry recently. Upon Kaken's entrance, Shin acknowledged his presence ever so briefly before going back to flipping through Izuku's hero notes, volume 13 to be exact. If he didn't know better, Izuku would have thought that Shin was trying to rub it in Kaken's face. He was soon followed in by his parents, and last but not least, Izuku's mother, who quickly went and sat by Izuku's side and held his hand to provide some motherly comfort. The room was soon filled with a strangled silence, neither of the parties knowing what to say, not wanting to start this roller coaster. The problem was soon solved as Mrs. Bakugou elbowed her son roughly on the side. Don't you have something to say, you little shit? She whispered, her powerful voice making it loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Izuku was going to give it to Bakugou. He looked guilty enough, all right. Quite uncomfortable as well, reminding him of all the visits his homeroom teacher has paid him over the course of the last month. Since walking in, he hasn't looked at Izuku even once, instead trying to find something to focus on in his surrounding. It definitely wasn't his smartest idea. As soon Bakugou focused on the volume 13, another reminder jabbing at his sides, he dared to trail his eyes up to the man holding it, and was quickly met with the coldest, most cruel look he has ever experienced. That physically makes him flinch. Oh, so that's what Shin meant when he said moral support, thought Izuku. Really, he almost felt bad for Kaken. Almost. Oh, this better be good, said Izuku in spite of himself, with that dead flat tone, hoping it was going to have the same effect on Bakugou as it does on Shin and make this shitshow a bit more interesting. It was enough to bring Bakugou's attention back to Izuku, but before he could say anything, he was beat to it by Izuku. Listen, whatever you've got to say, frankly I don't want to hear it. I'm not letting this train wreck become a sappy continuous wailing of I'm sorries. I don't care what issues you have with quirkless people, or with your own anger, that's something for you to deal with yourself. If my forgiveness is just for you to soothe your bruised ego and lessen your guilt, then you sure as hell ain't getting it, said Izuku, his tone cold, but harsh, harsher than what he was originally going for. But it seemed to work just fine given that Bakugou looked taken aback by the spiteful attitude displayed by his childhood friend, if he could even still be called that. But that's not what you're really here for, is it? Continued Izuku, this time more collected, as he slowly turned in the direction of Bakugou's parents, putting on the most obnoxiously fake smile he could muster. Kaken's quite great, isn't he? So smart, so athletic, and a strong quirk to boot it all. A hero material no matter how you look at it, said Izuku in faux admiration as he listed off Bakugou's good qualities. As if he wasn't in the room. Having heard those compliments one too many times, he'll surely get into UA without a problem. Unless, he trailed off, pretending to be deep in thought, unless all the bullying he's done ends up in his record. After all, no school would accept someone who encouraged their classmate to attempt suicide, and his chances of getting into UA and becoming a hero will be as good as gone. Wouldn't that be awful? He finished, voice coated with fake worry. So that's what you want? Take a fucking revenge on me? Huh. Fine, have at it then. I sure hell deserve it, don't I? Screamed Bakugou, in what most would perceive as his usual angry manner, but Izuku knew there was more to it. Rather than anger, it came across as more of a panic. Ah yes, panicked but not surprised. So even the oh-so-great Bakugou knew he had it coming, thought Izuku. Now, this was fun. You do, and I'm really tempted to get my revenge. But I won't, stated Izuku. Why not? Where's the catch? Asked Bakugou, getting slightly suspicious. Because becoming a hero was always your dream, just as it has been mine, and I don't make it a habit of destroying people's dreams, answered Izuku in a slightly more neutral tone. Preparing to deliver the ultimate blow, I'm not you, he finished, gathering all of his viciousness into this one final word. That seemed to do it. Bakugou looked outright ashamed, having lost all of his desire to argue. Pretty close to crying as well, if the trembling lip and twitch in his eye was anything to go by. Just so you know, I'm not letting you off the hook. You should fully appreciate the feeling of guilt, you know. It's the only proof that you're not a total scumbag if you're feeling any remorse for your actions. So how about this? Why don't you repeat what you said to me that day, right here, in front of your parents, my mom, my psychiatrist? Teased Izuku, feeling brave all of a sudden. It was the first time since he met Bakugou where he was the one in control. He could kind of understand why Bakugou was such an ass all the time if this was the feeling that went with it. And to think he literally had to brush against death to get to this point. He better be careful. Fuck no, shouted Bakugou. He was getting annoyed, but also slightly scared if he was being honest with himself. Deku, that he knew would never behave like that. He held no sadistic streak, no guts to try and challenge him in such way. And this one was unpredictable, so angry, so vicious in the most passive-aggressive way. Is this what was left of Izuku once he snapped and fell? For all he knew, the Midoriya Izuku that he knew all his life was already dead. Oh, you're not fun, complained Izuku. Alright, how about I help you? Yeah. Come on, let's say it together, explained the boy as he started moving his hands like a band director in Bakugou's direction, as if trying to get him to sing his part of the song. Inko grabbed one of her son's arms, trying to talk some sense into him. Izuku, don't you think that's enough? She said, while Bakugou looked at her with some sort of hope in his eyes. Nope, if anything, I think Mr. and Mrs. Bakugou deserve to hear it for themselves. They deserve to know what their son is capable of, he stated, and turned back to Bakugou. Alright then, let's say it at 3, okay. 1 to 3. If you believe they're holding your quirk over in the next world, you should just dive off the rooftop, the boys said in unison. Izuku in an overly cheerful voice, Bakugou in a flat, resigned tone as he kept his eyes down, staring at the floor, not being able to bear the scandalized look on his parents' faces. He was now crying, still refusing to look up. Now that that's done, let's get back to business. As I said, I won't come forward and tarnish Kaken's report, although I do expect some sort of compensation. After all, my medical bills won't pay themselves. But that shouldn't be a problem for you, right? Said Izuku, as he addressed Kaken's parents. Really, it's the least they could do, especially since it wasn't exactly a secret that his mother wasn't doing so well financially, the monthly payments sent by his father only being able to cover so much. The Bakugou couple nodded quickly as they made their way towards their son in an effort to comfort him. Oh, and Kaken, said Izuku as he addressed the distressed boy, this time more soft, more sincere. He quickly turned to Shin, who stayed the entire time, quietly watching the situation unfold. He gave Izuku a quick nod and a little smile to encourage him. Bakugou, who was now engulfed in his parents' embrace, looked over uncertainly. Ever since I was little, I looked up to All Might, the #1 hero who could save everyone with a smile on his face. He became my ideal, my goal, something to aspire for, my definition of heroism, Izuku said solemnly, the feeling of nostalgia creeping up on him. I'm still bitter about having to give up on my dream. Not because I'm lamenting about the unfairness of being born quirkless, but because I live with knowledge that someone like you, for as strong as you are, you're equally self-centered, unbothered by well-being of others, only caring about fighting, will be able to become a hero and contradict everything it always meant to be one. Congratulations, Katsuki. You've ruined it for me, said Izuku, the feeling of Kaken's full name on his tongue uncanny, but fitting the current situation. So when you walk out of this room, I want you to work your ass off till the brink of exhaustion, until you become the #1 hero and rub it in my face, so that I won't feel bad about losing my dream. Knowing that it's been tainted by you, said Izuku, his eyes filled with determination. You've already ruined so many things, so why not go all the way? Bakugou, who seemed to regain some of the usually present fire in his eyes, was quick to reply, fuck you, Deku. I don't need you telling me what to do. I'm gonna become #1, regardless of what you say. That's what I wanted to hear. Izuku was tired. It was nothing new per se. As for the last month, the teenager has become very well acquainted with the feeling of exhaustion as a side effect of his medication. It's normal, said Shin during their last appointment. Your brain is still going through an adjustment period. And insomnia is a rather common side effect of a lot of antidepressants. So yeah, it was all good. Except it wasn't. Given that no one was willing to rid the boy of his sleepless turmoil, Izuku decided to take the matters into his own hands. Because fuck Shin. In the hindsight, all of this was a very bad idea. It all started during one of his usual conversations with Mrs. Todoroki. Only this time they were joined by her daughter Fayumi. The first observation Izuku made upon her entrance was that this young woman was almost a splitting image of Mrs. Todoroki, save for the hot red streaks in her hair, undoubtedly inherited from her asshole father. After talking to her for a bit, Izuku was quite pleased to learn that she has not in fact inherited her father's god-tier assholism. Izuku has never met the man. He doesn't need to, at least not yet. After brief introductions, they have resumed to their previous conversation. "So how did meeting with piece of shit go?" asked Mrs. Todoroki. Her question quickly followed by Fayumi's scandalized expression at hearing her mother use such foul language. That it was your typical melodrama bullshit. Some shouting and insults were thrown around, well, mostly by me, and crying, replied Izuku in a rather nonchalant fashion, completely disregarding Fayumi's shock and confusion. The word got round quickly in this ward, meaning that most of the patients and staff were in on Izuku's personal drama, and so they all came to a silent agreement to refer to Bakugou as piece of shit and never call him by his actual name. And so over time Bakugou became the psychiatric ward's very own Voldemort. But Fayumi doesn't know that yet, bless her soul. "You actually cried." "Oh no, not me, piece of shit did. Honestly, you should have been there." Shin was there for emotional support and kept staring daggers at him. "It was hilarious," sneered the boy upon remembering the Bakugou shitshow with some sort of twisted fondness. His enthusiasm was however quickly disrupted by a long, loud yawn coming the boy's mouth. "Didn't get a good night's sleep?" asked Fayumi. "More like a good month's sleep," snapped Izuku, rubbing his temples as much as the bandage around his head allowed him to. "And that bitch Shin won't prescribe me anything cause it would clash with my antidepressants," scoffed the boy. "You know that Dr. Ayashi cares about your well-being and wouldn't want to give you anything with nasty side effects," said Mrs. Todoroki as she stroked Izuku's shoulders in a gentle, mannerly manner. "Wait a minute," chimed in Fayumi, "prescription won't do, but what about over-the-counter stuff? There must be some sleep relief that you could take." "Oh, really?" said Izuku, with a hint of amusement and sarcasm. "What are gonna do? Smuggle some quill into the hospital for me?" The determined smile on Fayumi's face told Izuku that indeed, she would. "Well then," thought Izuku, "this is going to be fun." The next day Izuku has found 2 bottles being dropped onto his lap, while the boy was busy filling up his notebook with sketches of Endeavor being eaten alive by crocodiles. If you looked closely enough, you'd also notice that some of them contained an already half-eaten Bakugou. He raised his brow at the bottles, then looked up to see Fayumi looking very smug. "I got the quill," she said, very proud of herself. "I can see that," replied Izuku, looking back and forth between the 2 bottles. "Why 2? he asked, confusion and curiosity seeping into his voice. "I forgot whether you needed day quill or NY quill, so I got you both," looking at very pleased Fayumi. Izuku didn't have it in him to grace the statement with a proper reply that wouldn't point out the stupidity and irresponsibility of casually getting 2 substances that are meant to do the exact opposite, which then lead to a train thought of what if you mix them. "Thank you, Fayumi-nisan." And thus Izuku was left alone in his hospital room, the notebook long forgotten, staring at the content of the 2 bottles, as the nerdy part of his brain deciding to wake up and cause drama. If you mix day quill and NY quill, you end up with what? Forever quill. Or given that the substances are meant to do the opposite, would they cancel each other out and have no effect when consumed simultaneously? No, that doesn't seem right. It's more likely that they would disturb a sleeping pattern, but given that mine is already fucked, how would I be able to tell? Shit, I'm mumbling again. So many questions that demand to be answered, a hypothesis that needs a confirmation, and a curiosity waiting around the corner, ready to kill the metaphorical cat. "Ugh, fuck it," said Izuku as he gulped down both substances in one go. That's when everything went to shit. At first he didn't feel any different. He spent a good portion of time looking out of the window, admiring the weather. It's almost May, so the days were getting brighter, warmer, waiting for anything to happen. Things got a bit blurry after a while. Izuku could feel his brain getting blurry, which he didn't even know was possible. But apparently losing contact with reality does things to you. As Izuku slowly regained clarity, the first thing he noticed was the sluggish feeling and the pounding in his head, reminding him of the first time he woke up in this god-forsaken loony bin. The second thing he noticed was the darkness. At first, he thought that one of the nurses has closed the curtains while he was out of it. But no, the curtains were open, and upon closer inspection Izuku came to realization that it was in fact nighttime. Which was strange to say the least, since it was still sunny just a few seconds ago. Is this some sort of a quirk? Probably not, he thought, which meant there was only one option left. Fucking hell, I traveled through time. His shout was followed by a tired groan, which definitely did not belong to him. "Dr. Ayashi, he's at it again," shouted Mrs. Todoroki. "Wait a minute, Mrs. Todoroki. When did she get here?" Izuku whipped his head to the side, where the woman was sitting in a chair by his bedside, with Shin standing in the doorway, looking down at a clipboard. "What the shit did you get in here?" asked Izuku, his brain still sluggish and disoriented about the whole situation. Shin chooses that moment to walk into the room. Do you remember what happened? He asked. No, I was sitting here and it was day and suddenly it's night. So obviously it was quill-induced time travel, said Izuku, as his lagging brain allowed for all the ridiculous bullshit to spill out of his mouth. Shin does not look impressed. You absolute fucking idiot, shouted the doctor. Why in the world would you mix day quill and NY quill together? Are you completely insane? What did you think would happen? First of all, if I was sane I wouldn't even be here. Second of all, who told you about my quill? Asked the boy, his eyes suddenly focused, full of suspicion. At that moment Fayumi poked her head through the entrance and waved at Izuku as she made her way through the room and stood by her mother's side. Sorry, I had to tell him since it's all my fault you went delirious in the first place, she said, her face portraying nothing but guilt. It was very irresponsible of you, said the doctor, his gaze switching between Izuku and Fayumi. Not only did you take medication against a doctor's recommendation, you even roped others into smuggling unauthorized substance into the hospital. And Shin went into the ranting dad mode. It was a perfect time to zone out. While the doctor was busy lecturing everyone about the dangers of overdosing and mixing medications, Izuku picked up the discarded notebook in hopes of finishing that sketch of Endeavor being devoured by crocodiles. His drawing skills were improving, that's for sure. Maybe once he's finished he'd show it to Mrs. Todoroki. I think she would like that, thought Izuku. Except when he opened his notebook on the most recent page, instead of Endeavor Massacre, Izuku was met with lines upon lines of text, written in what can only be described as very rushed and frenzied handwriting, which undeniably belonged to Izuku. The pages were also adorned with big bold letters at the top stating Endeavor the root of all evil. When did I write that? Izuku was rather astonished as he started to skim through his writing and came to a conclusion that what he was reading was in fact a conspiracy theory, a very detailed one at that. Izuku, are you listening? Asked the doctor. No, he replied absent-mindedly. But the writing in his notebook and the overall situation left Izuku very confused. The moonlight illuminated parts of the room, a reminder of a mysterious time slip, which apparently was not quill-induced time travel. Izuku needed the answers, and he needed them now. Can anyone tell me what happened? His question was met with a long, awkward silence, as the other individuals in the room looked at one another, not knowing what to say. All right, Mrs. Todoroki broke the silence. Where do we start? Ieyashi Shin was finally having his well-deserved lunch break. After starting his shift at 6 a.m., he felt exhausted and he was barely halfway through. And so Shin planned to have a short nap during his break to recharge. What am I, an old man? He thought to himself. Probably. At least I'm on a good way to becoming one. Not getting any younger either. I'm turning 40 next year. Ugh. This calls for a midlife crisis nap, he thought while lying on the couch in his office, being slowly lulled to sleep by the ticking of the clock. Suddenly Shin was awakened by an obnoxiously loud laugh coming from the corridor. He was annoyed at having his nap interrupted, but the annoyance was outweighed by sheer curiosity, as one does not get a lot of laughing in this part of the hospital. The doctor soon got up and opened the door. He was once again met with the obnoxious laugh, only this time louder as it came from a man who was currently walking out of Izuku's room. Hey, it was nice talking to you, Midoriya. I'm glad you're in a good mood, called out the man. I'll be back tomorrow to check your homework. Homework? Ah, it must be Izuku's teacher, thought Shin with a bit of suspicion as he remembered his patient talking about his homeroom teacher in a less than friendly manner. So why would the laugh? I thought Izuku hated the guy. As the teacher walked away from Izuku's room, he bumped into Shin, who was standing in the middle of the corridor, lost in thought. Ah, Dr. Ieyashi didn't see you there, exclaimed the teacher. He sure was in a good mood, a stark contrast to his usual visits. Good afternoon, how was your visit? Asked Shin, trying to squeeze out some details out of the man. The teacher laughed again, trying to get a hold of himself. Oh, it was great. I haven't laughed so much in ages. Whatever meds you put him on, they're doing God's work. Really? What did Izuku say? You know Bakugou-kun, right? Of course, the one responsible for the shitstorm that is Izuku's depression, stated the doctor as a matter of fact. The teacher stilled his movement, unprepared for the blatant statement. Trying to dissolve the tension, he continued, yeah, him. Anyways, Midoriya was asking about him and he seemed stuck on his name, so he said. He stopped for a bit, trying to mimic his student's voice and speaking manner. You know, the angry, shouty one. What was his name? Bakugou. And I just lost it right there. Yohaha, sneered the teacher, waiting for Shin to have a similar reaction. And boy was he not disappointed. Bakugou, exclaimed Shin, that's a good one. Gotta tell it to the nurses, it will spread like wildfire. Bakugou, asked Izuku. Bakugou, confirmed Shin. Daddy's funny as hell, but it doesn't really sound like me. I know, which is why I was concerned. Mind you, I still needed my nap, so I asked Mrs. Todoroki to keep an eye on you in the meanwhile, explained the doctor as both him and Izuku turned their heads in the direction of the white-haired woman. Mrs. Todoroki was having a good day, and by good she meant boring. In all honesty, there's only so much a person can do in this place before being driven further into insanity. She was currently sitting in the common room in the company of her daughter, who has dropped in earlier to give Izuku the sleeping medication they talked about yesterday, which is why she was more than a little surprised when Dr. Ayashi approached her, asking to keep an eye on Izuku, who right now should be sleeping like a baby from the medication. Nevertheless, she agreed, as the doctor seemed deeply concerned about the boy who has managed to settle himself nice and cozy in a particular place in her heart, reserved exclusively for her children. Well then, thought the woman as she came to a realization, looks like I now have 5 children. Just as Mrs. Todoroki considered brushing off Dr. Ayashi's concerns, her train of thought was disrupted by a maniacal laugh that belonged to no other than Izuku himself. The teenager in question wheeled himself into the common room at a speed that should not be achievable for a wheelchair. His hair wilder than usual, eyes wide open, pupils dilated. The boy's face was devoid of any sanity. "Holy shit, Mrs. Todoroki," he screamed. "Are you high?" she asked, full of disbelief at the state the boy was in. "I got the answers," announced Izuku, completely disregarding the woman's question. "What answers?" "All the answers to everything. I can feel the universe expanding in my bones," shouted Izuku, further disturbing and scaring other occupants of the room. "Oh, is this why Dr. Ayashi was concerned? What do I do with him?" "Right," said Mrs. Todoroki, hoping to distract the boy for a bit. "Why don't you sit with me and Fayumi and tell us all the answers? Just remember to keep your voice down," she added in her motherly tone. Although Izuku seemed quite out of contact with reality, he did as he was told. After wheeling himself next to Fayumi, he whipped out one of his notebooks seemingly out of nowhere and began to speak. "From the evolutionary standpoint, my existence is a liability to human advancement. Every year, the number of people born quirkless decreases as our genera are to be replaced with the superior ones of those with quirks. I'm going extinct. Both my parents have quirks, yet I was born without one. I'm an anomaly. I should cease to exist," screeched Izuku as he seemed to be having an existential crisis that was accompanied by what he thought were diagrams from his notebook, which to everyone besides him looked like a bunch of gibberish and nonsense. "Why do I exist?" screamed the boy in agony as once again he began to wheel himself at an impossible speed out of the room. The Todoroki women were left stunned, looking at one another and then back at the spot previously occupied by the insane teenager. "What did you give him?" asked the mother. "The quill." "What quill?" "All the quill. Go and get Dr. Ayashi. I'll stay here in case Izuku comes back," she said while rubbing her temples out of frustration. "Oh, fuck, what happened after that?" asked Izuku, no longer in disbelief but amusement. While he had no recollection of any of this happening, he felt like he was listening to a rundown of an episode from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He seemed to be the only one enjoying himself, though. The adults in the room, on the other hand, were very much tired of his shit after having to deal with quill-induced Izuku the whole day. "You wheeled yourself around the ward while screaming I challenged God to a knife fight. What actually happened was you stole a scalpel from a surgeon, don't know how, and started stabbing one of the All Might sketches in your notebook," relayed Mrs. Todoroki in the most flat and no-bullshit tone she could manage. "Haha, yeah, that sounds like me. Now then," announced Shin as he stood up addressing everyone at onset. "It's been a long day for everyone. Mrs. Todoroki, please go back to your room for today. Miss Fayumi, thank you for everything. I will see you again. Izuku, you little shit, we're going to have a talk." As the two women got up and left the room, Izuku was left alone with his psychiatrist. While he knew that Shin was only concerned about his well-being, he didn't look forward to being nagged by the doctor again. Instead of talking, Shin just ripped off a piece of paper from his clipboard and handed it to Izuku without any explanation. "What is this?" asked Izuku, eyeing the piece of paper suspiciously. "A prescription for Rameltian," says Shin. "It's most commonly used as antidepressant, but it also works as a sleeping drug. It's also one of very few that does not lead to a dependence. Take this to the dispensary now. They will sort everything out and you will be getting your dose from tomorrow evening onwards. I know I was very reluctant to give you anything besides antidepressants," he continues, "but I'd rather do this than have you going batshit crazy with whatever alternatives you're willing to try. Please be careful in the future, Izuku. I mean it," he finishes with a warning tone. "Can't promise anything," said Izuku, his voice full of mischief. "In that case, I can't promise that I won't smack you on the head next time you pull a shit like this," replied the doctor as he walked out of his patient's room, hiding his smile behind the clipboard. Another day, another opportunity to piss off your psychiatrist. Because when life gives you lemons, you squeeze them to get the juice in Shin's eyes. "Now this time I want you to open up a new page in your notebook and fill it with all of your good qualities," said Shin as if it was the easiest thing in the world. "My what now?" asked Izuku, feeling very unimpressed and maybe slightly sarcastic. But not too much since he already had lunch. "Izuku," exclaimed the doctor in his usual half-hearted threatening tone, "we've talked about this." "No, we didn't," You talked about this, and I pretended to listen while plotting Endeavor's murder, said the boy as a matter of fact while flipping through his notebook and pointing to a particular page titled Kill Endeavor to prove his point. See, that's another thing, shouted Shin as he stood up and pointed at his patient. What's up with your fixation on Endeavor? He's an ass. No, that's not it. I mean, it kinda is, but that's not your main problem. There's plenty of assholes you could be fixated on. Bakugou would have been a better choice, given that he actually fucked you up, yet somehow the doctor trailed off, hoping to achieve a dramatic effect, which was not dramatic, just straight up annoying. According to Izuku at least. Somehow, you're hyper-fixated on this one asshole who you've never even met in your life, who hasn't done anything to you, who you haven't had any contact with whatsoever. You know what I think? He asked cheekily. No, but I'm probably about to find out, said Izuku, rather unimpressed with his doctor's childish behavior. I think. There he goes again with the annoying pause. Just get fucking on with it. All right. I think that deep down it all goes back to your father. For fuck's sake, Shin, not again. Literally every session you bring up my dad at some point. I don't even know why you want me to talk about him, because there isn't anything to talk about. I haven't seen this man since I was a little kid. I don't remember shit about him, and yet you fixate on him. Now which one of us has daddy issues, huh? Shouted Izuku as he overflowed with irritation. The topic of his dad was a bit of a sore spot for him, and he knew it. And Shin knew it just as much. So why would he try to poke and pry on purpose, knowing how much it would agitate his patient? With you it's always daddy issues, or mommy issues. It's such a Freudian thing, you're practically fixated on it, exclaimed Izuku, trying to divert the attention from the topic, as well as blow off some steam by messing with the psychiatrist. Is there anything you'd like to tell me? Do you perhaps want to fuck Freud? Izuku, what the actual fuck? Shouted the doctor, feeling slightly disturbed by the boy's mental gymnastics that lead to this conclusion. Two can play that game, Shin. No. We're not doing it. I see what you're doing and we're not going off the topic. Back to the problem, said the doctor as he glared at the boy, wanting to get back to the main problem, rather entertain Izuku by indulging him in his shenanigans. Because your father left so early, you now have this internal unresolved conflict that you refer to as daddy issues that you simply refuse to acknowledge and deal with, which is why you're going to be bitter and sensitive about the subject and never be able to move on, unless you actually face it like an adult, said Shin in a gentle voice, one that Izuku has never heard before and barely recognized as belonging to this man. It was one of those rare moments when Shin showed him a different side of himself that Izuku knew meant something important. All right then, you Freud fucker, enlighten me about my daddy issues and how do they relate to my Endeavor hatred, said Izuku as he mentally patted himself on the back for coming up with Freud fucker. The doctor glared at him, but otherwise did not acknowledge the new insult. Instead, he opened up his notes about the unruly patient and began to elaborate on the origins of the daddy issues. Due to the distance between your father and yourself, there is a gap of some sort where a father figure is ought to be. Basically any male figure who you look up to, admire, learn from. When it comes to you, Izuku, that gap has been filled by All Might for a very long time, which makes sense if you look at it. It's a very distant admiration of a person who you have no interaction with, the same way you have no interaction with your father. Okay, that sounds like some Freudian shit, but okay, said Izuku, feeling a bit skeptical, but still curious about where all of this is going. After your suicide attempt and letting go of your dreams to be a hero, All Might is no longer a center of your universe. He is no longer an aspiration. Therefore, the gap remains empty once again. Right now you're angry, you're bitter, and for good reasons. However, there is also this anger towards your father, which you refuse to touch upon or even acknowledge, which caused you to look for another target, so to say. I'm not saying you see Endeavor as a father figure, but he's an excellent scapegoat for your anger, as it allows you to both be angry on someone else's behalf over his shitty behavior, as well as project your own feelings. Again, a distant, one-sided interaction, the same way as with your father, because you simply don't know how to do it any other way. The long-winded explanation of the doctor was followed by a pregnant silence as the teen was still trying to process everything the psychiatrist said to him. He felt the usual irritation, a byproduct of his defenses when it came to being analyzed to a point where you're unsure of your own motivations and identity. It felt like being scratched on the inside, knowing that it's there, but unable to touch it yourself. The vulnerability that came with those sessions was something Izuku will never become fully comfortable with. But he's smart enough to know that it's not meant to be pleasant, it's meant to be helpful. What the fuck, said Izuku, softly, but full of emotions that he cannot yet comprehend. Sorry, was it a bit too much? Asked Shin sheepishly, feeling that he overwhelmed the teenager. A bit is a strong word. Yeah, the silence dragged on, neither knowing how to continue the session. To be fair, the session was almost over anyway. Shin looked at his watch awkwardly, then back at Izuku, hoping that the boy will get the hint and end his misery. The man really hated being put in such tense, awkward situations. So, he said, standing up from the chair and heading towards the door. "Time's up," asked Izuku as he slowly started to wheel himself out of the room. "Don't worry, we will continue next session. I'm glad that we finally broke through your defenses when it comes to the topic of your father. I hope we can make more progress from now on." "Oh yeah, well I hope to win a lottery. But life is not a wish a bitch," said Izuku sarcastically. Just as the boy was about to leave the room, he was smacked on the head with a clipboard. "Oi, what did I say before? Don't get cocky with me. And don't forget to do what I asked you to. I know it seems silly, but it's an opportunity for you to look at yourself beyond the image of a quirkless, pitiful boy that the whole world around you insists on. You're more than an extra joint in your foot," said Shin in that inspirational tone that always irked Izuku. "We'll see about that." The next day, Shin found a very familiar notebook stuck on the door to his office with a note attached saying, "Did my homework like a good student." Suspicious, thought Shin, very suspicious. He grabbed the notebook and went into the office, already dreading whatever it was he was about to see. While flicking through many pages of personal thoughts, Endeavor-related conspiracies, and very graphic drawings depicting the hero's death, the doctor has finally reached the last page titled "The Awesomeness of Midoriya Izuku." What followed was a list of good qualities, most of which in Shin's opinions would be more suitable in the context have they been titled "How to be a Perfect Criminal," "Superb Murder Planning," "Can sing All Might's theme song while asleep," "Would be a good stalker," "No self-preservation." The doctor sighed and closed the notebook, feeling already tired despite the fact that his shift hasn't even begun. This was going to be another long day. "Izuku, what do you mean you're not going back to school?" screamed Inko at the top of her lungs, an image of distraught painted atop of her face. "I'm not going back. Simple as that," relied Izuku as a matter of fact, "and please don't shout. It's a hospital," he added, trying to calm down his mother. But why? I thought you were doing so well," pleaded Inko, unable to comprehend her son's questionable decision-making skills. "I am doing well, which is why I decided not to go back to school. It's not like I'm dropping out. I will still study at home, and I will come to school to write the exam. But I don't want to go back there, never again," said the boy, in hopes of convincing his mother. This was something he thought about recently. During his recent medical checkup, Dr. Kenko informed him that his leg was healing up properly and that next week he will have the cast taken off. It should have been a good news for Izuku, it really should have. Instead, it brought a wave of dread. Taking the cast off meant that Izuku would soon leave the hospital, followed by what would be a sad comeback to reality. A somewhat separate domain to that of the hospital where the days blur together and the passage of time doesn't seem quite as real. It's comforting, living in this limbo with no past and no future, only the present, where your biggest worry is having to take the medicine on time and what food the nurse would bring you this time. It's peaceful in a sense that your days are occupied by sessions with a somewhat eccentric psychiatrist, conversations with ever-so-nice Mrs. Todoroki, and daily shenanigans all brought together by the smell of death and medicine, seeping in, becoming part of your being. He wasn't ready to leave all of this behind. Has anyone told Izuku a month ago that he would grow used to the hospital and would dread leaving? He would have grabbed Shin's clipboard and smacked them on the head. Now things were different. Izuku wasn't looking forward to a pathetic pity party awaiting him at school where everyone was so worried about him and "hope you're feeling better." All of them were obnoxious liars, pretending to care, to lessen their guilt, to try and convince me and themselves of their righteousness and innocence. It was all stupid, and Izuku wanted no part in this bullshit. He told Shin as much, except not really. He wrote about it in his journal and left it at the doctor's office for him to read. And maybe he could have done a better job in writing out his thoughts. Because fuck school, pity party, fake caring probably wasn't the easiest thing to read and understand. But Shin managed to get the whole picture anyway, which just shows how well he knows Izuku at this point. Damn, he was good at his job. And so, after thinking about this dilemma for a very long time, Izuku came to the conclusion that in order to regain peace he just won't go back to school. Was he running away from his problems? Obviously. Did he care? No, not really. To be fair, Izuku's idea wasn't all that bad considering Shin actually agreed with him, which happens never. "I think you're right," he said to Izuku, when the latter presented him with the idea. To say Izuku was shocked would be an understatement, and as such he couldn't think of a snarky comeback of any sort, so he settled for a good old meme. "Why would you say something so controversial, yet so brave?" said Izuku, with as much dramatism as physically possible. "This is why I don't like to agree with you," said Shin, looking ever so unimpressed. It's like being unimpressed was this man's personality trait, slightly concerning and very unnecessary. And he went off on a tangent again. Right now he's supposed to be dealing with his mom, trying to convince her that he's not a lunatic about to jeopardize his own education. "Look, Mom, I know it doesn't sound great, but I talked about it with my psychiatrist and he agrees with me. Why don't I call for him right now and he can explain everything to you?" He really hoped that with Shin as the voice of reason things would go well. Izuku grabbed the remote used for calling the nurses and pressed the red button. Not a minute later the nice, if not slightly gossipy, four-armed nurse entered the room. Shoji-san, could you possibly go and get Dr. Iyashi if it's not too much trouble? He asked as politely as possible, since he was still in his mother's presence. Gotta keep up the appearances. Izuku is sure that his mother would faint if she found out how much of a chaotic garbage on fire her son has become over the course of his stay. Unfortunately, Shin had to fuck it all up with his grand entrance, which consisted of kicking the door open and shouting, "What do you want, you gremlin? Haven't you tortured me enough today?" Needless to say, Izuku shot him a stink eye so intense it could make children cry, but not Shin, because he's ever so unimpressed bitch. Maybe that's his quirk. Izuku hasn't figured that one out. Shin, not now, he said, while pointing to his slightly confused, but mostly scandalized mother. The doctor glanced over at Izuku's mother and in the blink of an eye a mask of professionalism returned on his face. It was something Izuku hasn't seen since their very first session. Sorry about that, Midoriya-san. How can I help you? Inko snapped out of her initial shock as she acknowledged the doctor. Oh, it's about Izuku not wanting to go to school. He said that you talked it over with him. Yes, of course. As Izuku's doctor, it is my priority for him to recover as much as possible and to be able to function in the world despite of his disadvantage. But most importantly, he needs to heal, emotionally that is, and I don't think going back to that school would be helpful in any way. The environment would only cause him more grief, said Shin, as he delivered the speech in a detached, clinical manner like a true doctor who you cannot win an argument with. It was going good, he continued. I understand your concerns regarding your son's education. However, transferring him to a different school, especially at this time, would only cause him more stress, so studying at home is the best option for now. Besides, Izuku is very intelligent, so I don't think this arrangement will stunt his learning process in any way. That is why I believe Izuku should be homeschooled until the end of the year. Once he enters high school, he will be able to have a new start towards better life. Both the doctor and Izuku have stared intensely at Inko, waiting for the woman to make a final decision. I think you make a good point. I want Izuku to be happy just like you. It's just... She was interrupted by another person slamming the door open. Before anyone had the chance to turn their heads and see who the intruder was, a loud wail of ICUKU was heard as a tall man in a trench coat ran inside the room and tackled the disoriented teenager. Hisashi. Wait, what? Dad? Izuku. Inko. Can somebody tell me what is going on? Shouted very confused Shin. Izuku pointed to the man hugging the life out of him. Oh, that's my dad, he said, almost in disbelief at his own words. The man, Hisashi being none the wiser, got off the bed and reached out to shake Shin's hand. Hi doctor, I'm Hisashi, Izuku's father. The psychiatrist had a moment of epiphany as he absent-mindedly shook Hisashi's hand. Oh my god, it's you. It's me. So technically I'm not supposed to be here since my job isn't done. But with a bit of imagination and a stolen boat you can get far in life, said Hisashi as he sat on Izuku's bed, retelling the events of his long journey that lead him to the current setting. Oh god, lamented Shin, looking back and forth between the freckled father-son duo. It's genetic, he said, despite being ignored in this impromptu family reunion. So you swam all the way to Japan on a stolen boat? The boy asked calmly, almost too calmly as noted by Shin, although he can't be certain given that it's his first time observing the interactions between the two. Yep, cool. What else did you steal? Hisashi's face lit up instantly at the question as he stood up and ran out of the room before muttering, "Be right back," leaving the remainder of the Midoriya family and one psychiatrist very confused to say the least. Given what the doctor knew so far of the distance between the Midoriya patriarch and the rest of the family, the level of casualness on Izuku's part felt rather off. Soon enough, the man's deep voice traveled through the corridor accompanied by an extra set of footsteps. I wanted to get you something to cheer you up, since you've been in the hospital for so long, said Hisashi as he neared the room, and I thought to myself what would be a better gift than that. Silence fell upon the room, as everyone's eyes immediately traveled to the source of the sound, currently being led on a leash by Hisashi himself. What the fuck? Murmured Izuku, his voice devoid of everything but confusion. Izuku, language, shouted Inko, scandalized at her son's foul mouth. Is that a fucking sheep? Said Shin, his composure and god-tier bitch face gone. Oh, so he can swear but I can't, whined Izuku at his mother as he pointed at his doctor, like a whiny teenager he never got to be. Enough. All heads turned and silence once again overtook the room as Hisashi slammed his hand against the wall, making the sheep jump in surprise. It didn't last long, however, as Izuku was quick to recover his spiteful fire fueled by daddy issues. And who are you to tell me what to do? Sneered Izuku, your ass disappeared on us for 10 fucking years, and yet here you are, swaggering your way in on a stolen boat with a goat. A sheep, interrupted Hisashi, like it's nothing. So you better start explaining yourself, or God help me, I'm gonna send you to the 7th circle of hell and not even my broken leg will stop me. Shouted Izuku, all of his frustrations seeping out of his body, into his voice, the feeling reminding him of the bakugou shitshow, except he didn't feel any satisfaction associated with his last tantrum. It was nothing like getting back at those who wronged you. It was pure anger and betrayal burning at his very core, unstable and intangible at the lack of a proper outlet. How dare he, thought Izuku after all these years. How dare he show his face, especially now. That won't do, oh no. Running on sheer spite won't get him far. No, this time, he already knew that. Unfortunately, knowing what not to do doesn't guarantee knowing the right answer either. So swallowing what little pride he managed to build up over his stay, Izuku turned around and looked at Shin, eyes of a lost and hopeless child searching for adult's wisdom. And once again Shin gave in and flashed his favorite patient a smile and reassurance as he looked back at Izuku's father, uncertain of how to handle the situation when the source of the boy's turmoil happened to be his father and not a cocky 14-year-old with superiority complex and anger issues. Whatever it was Izuku was searching for in his smile, he seemed to have found it as his expression has softened just a little, with the usual shit-eating grin once again shining through the clouds of uncertainty. After exchanging a nod between each other, both Izuku and Shin turned to look back at the situation at hand. And maybe, just maybe, the doctor was feeling a little mischievous himself, enough to offer some of his moral support. "This little shit right here," stated the doctor as he pointed at Izuku, who in return flashed him a middle finger at a speed of light to avoid his mother's judgment, "has a lot of issues, a solid 70% of which are your fault. So as both Izuku's psychiatrist and a hoe for drama, I'm going to ask you to start spilling the tea. And be quick, cause I've got a group anger management session to run in an hour." He finished his flat delivery, tapping his watch to indicate the hurry while maintaining eye contact with Hisashi. "Careful, Shin, your sass is showing," commented the boy in a rather dry tone. Their banter, however, dissolved immediately as Hisashi's playful demeanor diminished and Shin was met with the murderous gaze that could rival that of his own. The gruff man addressed his son without taking his eyes off bespectacled doctor. "Does he have to be here for this?" asked Hisashi, making his displeasure known. "He's not going anywhere," exclaimed Izuku, extending his arm in Shin's direction. "He's here as my moral support, so if you want to say anything, just fucking do it. I took an oath of confidentiality, so whatever is said in this room is not going anywhere," announced the doctor, hoping to dissolve at least some of the tension and hostility between father and son. "You're practically a stranger, and I'm supposed to trust you with our secrets?" asked Hisashi suspiciously. "Hisashi," said Inko as she pleaded with her husband, "ever since Izuku came here, he's been doing great, all thanks to Dr. Iyashi. I trust this man with our son's life, so we might as well trust him with everything else." After a seemingly endless stretch of silence, the freckled man sighed with defeat. "Fine," he murmured, "but I'm letting you know that this is going to be a long ride." So paused Hisashi as he once again sat by Izuku's bedside facing the splitting image of himself and a decade worth of regrets. "Where do you want to start this interrogation of yours?" "From the very beginning," stated Izuku as a matter of fact. "And that would be your job. What about it?" "Don't play with me," scoffed Izuku. "To begin with, I don't even know what your job is or where exactly you work. Legally, no company can send their employee abroad for more than 24 months at a time, which means that in the last 10 years you had to be back 4 or 5 times for downtime before being sent out again. So my first question is, where the fuck were you and what were you doing?" he asked, tone malicious, full of accusations. "I don't work for a company," said Hisashi. It was slow, hesitant, uncertain. It gave Izuku that feeling that whatever he was about to hear he wasn't going to like, but it was something he desperately needed to know. "And well, the best way to describe it would be self-employed. I go and do my job, the word gets around, more requests come in, and before you know it you're halfway across the world in hiding, because your last target was the leader of a sex trafficking ring, and a better half of all organized crime groups in the world are out for your blood." "A leader of sex trafficking ring is out for you blood?" shouted Izuku. To say he was shocked was an understatement. While sometimes he toyed with the idea of his father being a secret agent, spy, or a criminal, as one does when you're a child with too much imagination and too little truth, he never thought any of this was even close to reality. No, I killed him, so his accomplices were out for my blood. But that's old news anyway," said Hisashi dismissively. "I don't get paid enough for this," murmured Shin, as he stood in the corner of the room, massaging his temples in preparation for an oncoming headache. After a long pause, it seemed as though Izuku finally processed the absurdity that was his father's profession. "Wow," whispered Izuku as he turned to once again look his father in the eye, ready to face the reality. "You killed a person," he said, in the same monotone voice usually reserved for fucking with his psychiatrist. "I killed a lot of persons," said Hisashi, mimicking his son's tone of voice. Oddly enough, Inko remained quiet the entire time. Whenever the topic of his dad came up, Inko never spoke poorly of her husband despite having to raise their son by herself. If anything, Izuku remembers his mother looking very fondly whenever she talked about Hisashi, full of love and understanding despite the distance between them. "Mom, you knew about all of this?" asked Izuku, despite already knowing the answer. "I never knew what to tell you. Your dad's job carries a lot of risks, both for him and for us. There's always this knowledge in the back of my head that something could go wrong during his assignment and he could never come back. I didn't want to burden you with that knowledge, said Inko as she looked up sadly at the two most important men in her life. It was easier to say Daddy is working abroad than Daddy is fighting international crime lords, you know, she asked, while trying to laugh through her tears. Oh honey, exclaimed Hisashi as he stood up and hugged his wife. You're always out and about getting yourself in danger, you stupid man, said Inko, her voice muffled as she was enveloped in her husband's embrace. At least I'm your stupid man. And hey, if it wasn't for getting yourself in danger, we wouldn't have met in the first place, remember? Asked Hisashi as he lovingly looked at his wife. Ugh, can you not? Shouted Izuku in disgust at his parents' display of affection. Wait, how do you two meet? Asked Shin with the curiosity of long-time telenovela fan. Shin, what? This is better than La Reina del Sur, and let me tell you that is hard to beat, exclaimed the doctor in a defensive tone. No offense, but can we maybe get back on track? Asked Izuku, his tone full of offense. Oh, right, said Inko, embarrassed as she returned to her previous spot after you got your diagnosis. I remember how broken you were, and as much as I wished that Hisashi was with us during that time, he had to go. He had to do it for our well-being. What do you mean for our well-being? Surely staying with us would have been better, asked the boy apprehensively, as he mentally prepared himself for a parade of excuses. Izuku, Hisashi called out to get his son's attention. After you were born, I started taking less assignments since I hated being away from you and your mother. I wanted to quit altogether. But abruptly the man stopped as he remembered all the years he spent in separation from his dear family and the events that lead up to that. But in my line of work, you don't get to quit. You don't get to have a normal life. For the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to be truly happy. You and Inko are my only happiness, and I'd hate myself if anything happened to you. Unfortunately, my work finally caught up to me and I could no longer keep you safe, he said regretfully. There was a long pause that followed the statement. There was a rat amongst us, scoffed Hisashi, anger overtaking him upon remembering the feeling of betrayal. He somehow got access to sensitive information, our private files, probably one of the highest security files that were held. They had everything, our real names. Everywhere we went, everything we did, who we were before, our families. The man grew quieter, his voice trembling as he listed off all the stolen secrets. Up until this day, I don't know how he got them. All I know is that one day everything was going great, and next day I've received an intel that one of my enemies got his hands on my files, and that I quickly needed to disappear. Or he'd come for me using any method available, including you two, said Hisashi, and he looked helplessly at his wife and son, the face of a defeated man unable to save his family. It was a lot. Izuku felt the entire perspective of his world shifting. It was so easy to stick to a mentally painted image of an asshole father who left for work because he didn't care. It was easy because there weren't any doubts that he had every right to detest him, a man with no redeemable quality, a man who made no effort to show remorse for his wrongdoings. It felt somewhat flat, one-dimensional, a simple hero versus villain scenario where there was no doubt who the bad guy was. Now though, it wasn't that simple. I still won't forgive you, said Izuku, tears in his eyes. It was true, he wouldn't yet forgive his father, even if he could, not after so many years. Even with all the knowledge and understanding of how hard the situation was and that leaving them was the lesser of two evils, he couldn't yet let go of his feelings. I wouldn't expect you to. He felt somewhat better knowing that his father understood him and held no resentment for how he felt. Slowly he extended his arms, tears falling, and he looked at his father expectantly. Be a dad for once and hug me, damn it, said Izuku, his voice quiet, yet full of hope. How could I not? Replied his father. At that, Hisashi stood up and took a seat next to his son, pulling him into a bear hug. It felt nowhere near as awkward as Izuku expected. If anything, he felt the warmth of a parent's love. He allowed himself to indulge in the comfort of his father's embrace as he cried into his shoulder. You've been gone all these years. Why, Sob, why did you show up now? When I got all from your mother saying that you attempted suicide, I felt like my world was collapsing. I left you to keep you safe, and I couldn't even do that one thing properly. It was horrible, this feeling of helplessness, and I just knew I had to see you. Even though I was in the middle of an operation and there's still risk of my enemies finding me, I couldn't imagine not seeing you, said Hisashi, feeling quite tearful himself. You smell like cigarettes. I know. You're a mess. I know. And I don't hate you. I can't forgive you just yet, but I don't think I can hate you. That's good to know. How long will you stay? The question brought the father and son back to the reality of the very limited time they had together. I can't stay long, said Hisashi. There's a fundamentalist organization in America advocating for eugenics program that would kill off the quirkless children to rid the population of weak genes, and I have to stop them. What followed was a tense silence. The topic of the treatment the quirkless population received was an uncomfortable one. Everyone knew about it, but no one wanted to talk about it. Hisashi felt very strongly about it, partially due to his own son being quirkless, and partially due to his distaste at the way the quirkless minority was isolated and treated as subhuman or second-class citizens in so many places. Even Shin looked rather uncomfortable, if not furious, while the Midoriyas shared a sad, unspoken look between each other. Go on, Dad, said Izuku, trying to lighten up the atmosphere in the room. Go and be a fucking hero to these people, he shouted while holding up his fist excitedly. At that, Hisashi stood up and walked towards the door. I'm no hero. I'm just a man trying to do his best, he said, and let me tell you, my job forces me to do a lot of things that are less than heroic. But sometimes you gotta do them for the greater good. The world isn't that simple, Izuku. I need you to remember that. Hey, Mr. Grand Speech, sorry to interrupt you, but your sheep is gone, shouted the doctor as he pointed to the open door and the obvious lack of the sheep in the room. Fuck. At that, Hisashi ran out of the room in a panicked attempt to retrieve a sheep hiding somewhere in the hospital. Shit. The mother and son turned their heads as the doctor also ran out of the room in the opposite direction. They could faintly hear him shouting, "Move it. I'm late for the anger management session." Mom. Yes, Izuku. How did you and Dad meet? Inko smiled at the question as she lovingly looked at her wedding ring. Now that's a story for another time. Once again, Izuku found himself on the hospital's rooftop. It was a rather nice day, if one doesn't count the catastrophe of a family reunion that took place mere hours ago. Although for someone who was admitted to the psychiatric ward after taking a jump from the top of a school building, the staff sure didn't have any trouble leaving Izuku unsupervised out here. To be fair, he was currently stuck in a wheelchair, and the fence here was much higher and much sturdier than the one in his school, so yeah, fuck the hospital staff, they won't even let you repeat your mistakes. Definitely not something he should say out loud in this place, lest his sweet release form goes to hell and he's gonna be stuck for the rest of eternity in a white room with no doorknobs and a very unimpressed Shin. Where was he? Oh yeah, he was on the rooftop smoking a cigarette that he stole from his dad's pocket while hugging him. That is definitely a new low, even for me, thought Izuku while trying not to choke, as his lungs resisted the offensive smoke. He never understood why people would start smoking. The stench was impossible to stand. The coughing was straight up annoying. Not to mention the underlying knowledge that you're basically giving yourself cancer. He never understood, but the curiosity was there, which is why when he felt the outline of the cigarette pack in the pocket of his father's trench coat, he thought to himself, life is already so goddamn weird. This might as well happen. And it did. Unfortunately, his musings were interrupted by a sudden slam of the door, followed by a disheveled-looking Shin. I am disappointed on so many levels. I don't even know where to begin, said the doctor in his typical stone-cold bitch fashion upon noticing the offending cancer stick in his patient's mouth. Usually, Izuku, what the fuck, is a good start, replied the boy, as if he wasn't struggling to breathe mere moments ago. And maybe, just maybe, he would have managed to sound as smug as he hoped for, if it wasn't for the coughing fit immediately interrupting his comeback. All right, that's it. With that, Shin stormed over to his patient and snatched the cigarette from his mouth and stomped it with his foot, while smacking Izuku on the back in a panicked manner. The doctor continued to shout hysterically through Izuku's cough attack, "Got him, Izuku. You can't just suffocate like that." He continued to smack the boy on the back. "Hog, I don't even know how to do first aid." "What do you mean you don't know first aid? You're a fucking doctor." "I'm a psychiatrist. Not a physician, you dumbass." Fortunately for the two, the coughing fit finally let go, and all they were left with was the sound of their labored breathing as the panic slowly dissolved. Eventually, Shin sat down on the bench with a grunt while looking off into the distance as both him and Izuku simultaneously let out a long, tired sigh. "What a day, huh?" asked the boy, his voice hoarse, his ears not expecting an answer. The doctor finally looked down at the crushed cigarette as he extended his hand in Izuku's direction and made a grabby motion. "Come on. Hand the rest of them over," he said. "Don't think I'm so naive as to think you don't have more." The teenager mumbled something under his breath as he begrudgingly handed over the cigarette pack. "The lighter too." "Ugh." Once again Izuku complied, albeit not without throwing Shin the dirtiest glare he could manage. "Where did you even get those?" asked the doctor, eyes full of concern and curiosity as he looked over the cigarette pack in his hand. "Took it straight out of my dad's pocket when I gave him a hug," said Izuku in a nonchalant fashion, hoping to get a kick out of the good doctor. Now that left him baffled. "You stole cigarettes from your dad, who's what?" "The spy, secret agent. Mom said he's technically a mercenary," corrected Izuku. "A mercenary?" exclaimed Shin, his voice once again filled with panic without being noticed. "I don't know whether to be impressed or concerned," he said as an afterthought. "Please be impressed," said Izuku. "I don't ever get to impress anyone." "You're insufferable." "Thanks, you're not so bad yourself," replied the boy. "Anyway, what are you doing here all by yourself? Don't you have Mrs. Todoroki to bother?" asked Shin, motioning to the wide, empty rooftop. "Not until 4. What about you? Weren't you supposed to be managing a group of very angry people trying to get their shit together?" "Don't change the topic. I want you to tell me, why did you decide to smoke? You know how unhealthy and disgusting those cigarettes are?" asked Shin as he shook his head in disapproval. "You know what they say," joked the boy, "suicide for procrastinators." "Oh, he shouldn't have said that. You know, it would be a shame if your release form accidentally fell into a paper shredder, wouldn't it?" asked Shin with his trademark unimpressed tone and face of a disappointed mother. "Fuck you, Shin. We both know you wouldn't be able to put up with me that long." Now spill the tea, cause you sure as hell ain't here for a smoking break, said Izuku. As much as Shin annoyed him at times, he could appreciate the banter between them. He never had that with anyone else, which made him wonder if Shin's questionable level of professionalism would be a problem. Although the man did tell him a story of how he had to fist fight his way into getting a medical license, so maybe being professional was overrated. Look, Izuku, I'm not supposed to be telling you these things due to the patient confidentiality, but fuck it. You will never believe who came to the group anger management session. And here goes the remains of Shin's professionalism. Taken to the back alley and shot in the head by his thirst for drama. Endeavor? Asked the boy, eyes full of hope, mischief, and murder. You wish. No, it was Bakugou, exclaimed Shin in his suburban gossip mom voice. Now that was way more interesting than his smoking habits. Fucking Bakugou Katsuki and anger management. Everyone and their grandma joked about him needing it. But it was also equally known that it wouldn't happen. Did the Bakugou shitshow really affect him that much? And what was Kaken doing there? He got lost or something. The good doctor looked uncertain. He knew he overstepped the boundaries long ago when it came to Izuku's case. He never meant for it to happen, it just came naturally. But now with Bakugou as his patient as well, he would have to start being impartial for the sake of both of them and whatever remained of his professional conduct. His initial impression of Bakugou based on what Izuku said wasn't the best, to say the least. But Shin knows he needs to put those feelings aside if it means helping Bakugou in making a personal progress and amending for the things he did in his misguided superiority complex. That being said, a little gossip never killed anyone. And maybe, just maybe, telling Izuku of Bakugou's progress could help them both in some way. Time will tell. Surprisingly no, said Shin. He came to the session on his own accord from what I could tell. Now, you should have seen his face when he realized I was going to be the one running the session. It was priceless, laughed the doctor as he waved for Izuku to come closer. Fuck, this is better than those shitty telenovelas of yours. Tell me everything. How did he look? What did he say? Asked Izuku, firing of the questions in a childlike excitement that used to be so typical of him before the fall. Now, as I said, I can't say much about the session itself, but he will be coming back for one-on-one sessions, so you might end up bumping into him, warned the doctor. Oh fuck no. You gotta let me in on your schedule so I can avoid that. You've been snooping around my office recently. Shouldn't you know my schedule already? Asked Shin, not even bothered about Izuku's not-so-subtle snooping around confidential paperwork, because sometimes things be like that. First of all, I have no idea what you're talking about, said the boy, trying to feign ignorance, although his need for sarcasm took over relatively quickly. And second of all, even if I did, I wouldn't have looked at your schedule. Only the official evaluation notes you submit to the board. Gotta stay updated on the shit you tell them about me. You know what? Suddenly Shin was interrupted by a beeping sound coming from his pager. He took a quick glance at the device to check the room number. Well, it was nice talking, but it looks like Mrs. Todoroki needs me, announced the doctor as he stood up and adjusted his glasses, readying himself to return to the ward. Hey doc, wait up. I was gonna go and see Mrs. Todoroki anyway, said Izuku, trying and failing to make a rotation in his wheelchair to get to the door. Eventually Shin turned around and took a hold of the wheelchair's handles, pushing Izuku into the elevator. For all the talk about elevator music, I don't think I've ever been in an elevator that played any music. Like, are they ever real, or are they just some cryptids? Izuku, I wish you came with a mute button. Thanks, I get that a lot. The rest of the elevator ride was silent. It was a good type of silence though. One that didn't indicate tension or left either side feeling the need to fill SSID's silence with useless chatter. More often than not, Izuku found himself feeling quite content in the company of the eccentric doctor, Mrs. Todoroki, the gossipy four-armed nurse, and Fayumi Nisan. Over the years, as his quirkless status left him isolated, the only silence Izuku experienced was the lonely, unfulfilling one. Now though, despite the situation he's in, the boy can safely say that the past 6 weeks in the hospital felt better than the past 10 years of his life. Okay, that's just sad, said Shin, interrupting Izuku's thoughts. Huh, you were mumbling again, he explained. With a quiet ding, the elevator door opened and the doctor stepped out, followed by the quiet, metallic screech made by Izuku's wheelchair. Just as the two were rounding up the corner in the direction of Mrs. Todoroki's room, Izuku bumped into the bespectacled doctor as he abruptly stopped in his tracks. Shin, what the? SHHHH. The doctor quickly backtracked and peeked out from the corner they were standing behind. Izuku wasn't sure what startled the doctor, but it must have been serious. Psst, Doc, whispered Izuku, why are we hiding? He's here. Who? Endeavor. Izuku couldn't believe his ears. He rolled the wheels forward as quietly as possible to take a look, and sure enough, an angry-looking trash can on fire known as Endeavor was standing in front of his wife's room, accompanied by Fayumi Nisan, who looked somewhat panicked as she tried to calm her father down. Izuku quickly turned back and looked at Shin. Shit, he can't be here. He's only going to upset Mrs. Todoroki. What do we do? Asked the boy, his protective side taking over. Izuku has grown very fond of the gentle woman. who suffered abuse at the hands of her husband along with her children. He could never understand how anyone could bring themselves to hurt her. Yet here he was, faced with the very monster who did. He wasn't a hero, but that doesn't mean he couldn't help her. I'm pretty sure she called for a doctor to scare him away. I can't tell him to leave without a reason, so we must do something to provoke him, mused Shin, the cogwheels in his head turning. I've got an idea, exclaimed Izuku, as loudly as he could without being overheard by the nearby flaming garbage can. Shin felt skeptical, understandably so. Go on, he said nevertheless. We go out there and I start screaming like I'm batshit crazy. That will throw off his rhythm. Then I grab a phone book and start hitting him with it, cause you know, phone books don't leave bruises. While I do that, you attack him from behind and hit him in the head. Once he's out, we take him to a secondary location, and before you know it, bam, someone's gonna find him dead in the back of a trunk with his hand sticking out of the taillights 3 days later. Shin did not look impressed. Why, he said, and if it wasn't the most desperate and resigned tone Izuku has ever heard. Why are you like this? What do you want me to say? Shrugged Izuku. The TV in the common room has access to Netflix. The doctor sighed once again. He expected nothing. Yet he still managed to be disappointed. Look, I'm on board with the whole batshit crazy screaming, but none on the found dead in the back of a car trunk. Deal. Deal. So, do I just push you out there? Yeah, okay, but how crazy are we talking? Forever Quill level of crazy. Jesus. Alright, let's do this. With a newfound resolve, the doctor once again grabbed the wheelchair handles and pushed his patient forward to do what had to be done. Immediately Izuku started screaming like his life depended on it, while Shin schooled his expression to remain as impassive as possible. He's sure they made quite a sight. Fayumi looked over her father's shoulder, very confused at Izuku's behavior, but Shin quickly mouthed play along as discreetly as possible to reassure Fayumi and not have their charade given away. As soon as the two got close enough, Izuku started to shout nonsensical threats and insults at the man, hoping to antagonize him enough to get an aggressive response and get him kicked out. You fucking pile of wombat shit, screamed Izuku, trying to sound as angry and insane he was back during the Quill incident. To his credit, Endeavor was so surprised at the sudden insult that he didn't have the time to get angry straight away. Although, being Endeavor, his anger caught up to him rather quickly. What did you say, you insolent brat? I killed God in 2007 and your next pal, screamed Izuku in a vicious manner, which caused Endeavor's beard to light up in his signature flame. He promptly turned towards the doctor, who seemed unusually calm and quiet despite handling an apparent lunatic. Aren't you going to do anything about him? He asked, barely concealing his fury. As always, Shin managed to remain cold and professional when needed, which mostly occurred when he had to bullshit his way through something as he answered the flaming man. Sir, as I'm sure you are aware, this is a psychiatric ward, and this kind of behavior is common in a lot of our more unstable patients. So please try not to aggravate him further for his own well-being. On that note, please put out the fire on your beard, as it is against our health and safety protocols to have any flame inside the building. Otherwise, I will have to get you removed from the premises. You heard him. Begone, thought. Begone, screeched the boy, waving his arms around in a chaotic manner, while Shin gently patted him on the head as if it was the most normal thing in the world. By this point, Endeavor barely managed to put out the fire on his beard, gritting his teeth in fury, only a step away from snapping, while Fayumi did her best not to laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation. See right here, the fire. I have a proof, shouted Izuku. You're the devil. You think that with the god gone you can do what you want, but just you fucking wait. I will stab your pathetic excuse of a heart straight out of you and take your place on the throne, you hear me? This is unacceptable, shouted Endeavor, once again addressing the doctor, seeing as there wasn't any chance of talking sense into the insane teenager in the wheelchair. You know what's unacceptable? Asked Izuku, in an eerie calm voice as he looked the man straight in the eye, for the first time not hiding behind the curtain of insanity. He thought of all the things Mrs. Todoroki told him, all the things he has gathered from his hero analysis as he gave the man the sharpest, most cruel glare he could manage. He managed to catch the man off guard once again. It's unacceptable how a swine like you is still walking amongst us. You think you're so smart. You think I can't see the coldness and cruelty oozing off your heart. Listen here, boy, snarled Endeavor as he took a hold of the wheelchair and got right up in Izuku's face. I don't know what is going on inside that crazy head of yours, but you better stop that right now, before I get really mad. Izuku tried to swallow down the fear as he felt the heat radiating off the man's beard once again. It's for Mrs. Todoroki, he told himself. He was so close. Or what? Asked Izuku with a smirk, his tone getting dangerously low and quiet so that only Endeavor could hear him. You'll beat me like you did with the rest of your family. Bam! Critical hit, which was ultimately followed by the man snapping and violently grabbing Izuku in his fury. All right, that's enough, exclaimed Shin as he motioned for one of the nurses to come over. Sir, you're conducting yourself in a violent manner and threatening my patient. I am removing you from this ward, as well as banning you from any future visitations. The doctor and the four-armed nurse both moved to pull Endeavor away from Izuku, but not before the boy has spat in the man's face, wearing the most shit-eating grin to have ever graced the humanity. As he was being dragged out, the angered man spared one last glance at the green-haired boy in the wheelchair. "Just you wait," Endeavor called out Izuku as he flipped the bird to the fuming man. "This isn't over. When I get out, I will make your life living hell. I will set the whole world on fire if I have to." The man glared at the teenager, as his whole being became an embodiment of the wrath itself. "This isn't a threat," said Izuku, "it's a promise." Soon enough there was no Endeavor in sight, and so Izuku turned to Fayumi, who at this point was barely holding it together. "It's okay, the trash was taken out, you can laugh now." Fayumi doubled over almost immediately, laughing harder than she ever did before. She felt hysteric, cathartic, so many things at once. No one has talked to her father like that. It was an amazing sight to say the least. Fayumi knew that her father's anger wouldn't pass quickly after something like that. But for now she wanted to enjoy his defeat. In the meantime, Izuku wheeled himself closer to Mrs. Todoroki's room and knocked on the door. "He's gone. You can come out now." The door opened as the white-haired woman walked out hesitantly, while she wanted to laugh along with Fayumi. Her fear of Endeavor and concern for Izuku's safety took over. "Izuku, are you all right?" she asked, gently grasping Izuku's face, turning it from side to side looking for any injuries. "I'm fine. He just grabbed me suddenly at the end, but then I spat in his face and Shin and Miss Shaoji pulled him away," replied the boy, hoping to calm the woman down. Izuku himself was buzzing with energy. The encounter left him feeling a rush of adrenaline. "I'm sorry," said Mrs. Todoroki. "I didn't want to drag you into this. I only called for Dr. Ayashi as a last resort, since I didn't want to be alone with Enji." "It's not your fault," replied Izuku as he hugged the woman in what he hopes was a reassuring manner. "I wanted to say a few things to this bastard for a while. This was as good of an opportunity as any," he chuckled. "As soon as I heard your voice I became so scared. I was so scared he would hurt you, just like hurt me and Shaodo," she sobbed. Shaodo, Mrs. Todoroki's youngest son. Izuku talked to the woman quite often, and so he had a good grasp on the situation of the family. She talked about Shaodo a lot, more often than not riddled with guilt, as she told over the same story of how she snapped and spilled boiling water on the child's face, because it reminded her so much of her husband. The same story of the strict training that Shaodo was forced into by his father when his quirk manifested. The same story of her child, whose dream to be a great hero like All Might was shattered in a manner much different, yet just as brutal as Izuku. It was probably the first and the only time in Izuku's life when he was glad to have been born without a quirk. One day he was going to meet Shaodo. He was already elbows deep in the Todoroki's family drama, might as well go all the way. But that's for later. Now he needed to comfort the woman who became like a second mother to him. "I'm okay, you're okay, he can't hurt us anymore." Shin kicked him out of the hospital for good. He won't be allowed to visit anymore. Speaking of Shin, the man just got back up from the reception, after having to escort the angry man out of the hospital and banning him from making any more visits. "What you did," he said while pointing at Izuku, still trying to catch his breath, "was the most stupid thing I have seen in my entire life. Do you have no self-preservation instinct?" "No, thought so. Come on, Shin, don't be so stiff. It was epic. I talked shit to Endeavor, spat on his face and got him kicked out of here. This couldn't have been better." "Perhaps so, but still, what did I tell you about being more careful?" "I don't know, Shin. What did I tell you about not expecting miracles?" "Dr. Ayashi," called out Mrs. Todoroki, "thank you for helping me. And I'm sorry that I've put you both in this situation. Please don't trouble yourself with it. It was about time this man got banned from here, and as much as I'm furious with Izuku right now, he did do a splendid job in getting him kicked out," said Shin, wiping his glasses clean as he tried to give Izuku a reprimanding glare, although the effect wasn't the same when he had to squint. "Okay, cool. Now that this shitshow is over, how about we go to the common room and watch some Netflix?" asked Izuku. "I wish I could, but I've got work to do," replied Shin. "Don't be like that, Doc. We are your work. You've got to look after us, so get your ass to the common room and look after us like a good doctor you're supposed to be," said Izuku, already turning in the direction of the common room. "Ugh, fine. But don't think you're off the hook after the stunt you pulled at the roof today," exclaimed the doctor as he joined his patient's side and ruffled his hair. "Wouldn't dream of it. Shit was good while it lasted. However, as some smart-ass asshole once said, everything good has to come to an end." Yesterday Izuku's cast was finally taken off. Don't get him wrong, it felt good to be able to walk after being stuck in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. But it also meant he was soon to be discharged. He felt uncertain, to say the least. He managed to find comfort within the sterile walls of the hospital, comfort that he never got in the outside world. Because that's how he saw it, the outside, the foreign, unfamiliar. Humans are creatures of habit, and it was almost scary how quickly Izuku's normal became that of daily antidepressants, being surrounded by medical staff and the never-ending whiteness of the corridor between his room and Shin's office. It felt good to be treated as a patient, just another tormented soul on the road to recovery. The doctor's eyes full of sympathy rather than ridicule and pity he faced on a regular basis. It felt good to be treated like a person. and it felt shitty knowing that all of this was about to end. His mom came over the day before to start taking Izuku's belongings back home, since he accumulated quite a bit over his stay. It solidified the dread in his stomach, the knowledge of how little time he had left. Once again he found himself in Shin's office, and probably the last his mind provided ever so unhelpfully. Maybe all of it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that he actually managed to pass his psych eval, which is bullshit. One look in the mirror is enough for Izuku to know that he's not stable enough for release, or so he tells himself. It's reassuring in some sense to know that he's not yet healed, that he never will be. It shouldn't feel as comforting as it does, but not being well means he can always get better. I am damaged felt good to admit to oneself. Izuku knows that it's a fucked up way of thinking, but looking in the mirror and seeing eyes that no longer hold the vibrance of life, hair much longer and shaggier than ever before, he feels somewhat accepting of his current state. Fucked up Izuku was still better than a dead one, that's for sure. What are you thinking about? Asked Shin while finishing off the paperwork for Izuku's discharge. Looking at the forms made everything seem so final. How bold of you to assume I think, said Izuku instead of vocalizing the current anxiety, because he doesn't want his last day here to be all deep and brooding. Figured as much, murmured the doctor, but really, what's bothering you? And his voice cracks ever so slightly. Without the trace of the usual sarcasm, he's grown so fond of a genuine response. I don't want this to be over, Shin. I like being here. Nobody looks at me like I'm worthless. I have people to talk to. I've never felt so calm and content like I do here, and the outside world. He hesitated. The bespectacled man looked at him, nodding in silent encouragement. And the outside world scares me so much, admitted the boy, his voice laced with fear despite his best attempts to sound calm. I mean, forget the hero bullshit, because I'm fucked either way. Quirkless people are quite rare in my generation, and they have a much harder time making a life for themselves and finding a job, because the world is so hostile towards us. Can't see my future as anything but miserable. I feel so hopeless, whispered Izuku in defeat, his head hanging low, face covered by his hands in hope of hiding the tears threatening to fall. The boy felt a hand gently pressing down on his shoulder as another tried to pry his own away from his teared-up face. It's hard, isn't it? Asked Shin, with gentleness Izuku never heard before. It's kinda normal to feel hopeless. No matter what you want to do and how hard you work towards it, there will always be a person with a quirk better for that job. It sucks, and I won't lie to you, it won't be easy. But you're the most petty little shit I've ever met, and we both know that you can pull yourself through all of the crap life throws at you, said the doctor as he continued to rub Izuku's shoulder in a comforting manner. I want you to go out there, live your life to the fullest. If you have no other reason to keep on living, then do it to spite the whole damn world who hates people like us. People like us? Asked Izuku, his face slowly changing from shock to understanding. The doctor nodded, amused by his patient's reaction. Shin, you lying bitch, screamed the boy, his surprise overshadowed by frustration at the lack of knowledge. Technically, I didn't lie, I just omitted the truth. Besides, it wouldn't be smart to go around telling everyone that I'm quirkless, even in a place like this, said the doctor as a matter of fact. His statement was followed by a long silence. The doctor tried to look nonchalant about revealing his status, but failed miserably as the anxiety slipped through the cracks of his usual resting bitch face. Izuku understood. Even though it was just the two of them in the room, just two quirkless people trying to find common ground, it was always scary to talk about these things. It was safer to stay quiet, especially around other people. He had spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to figure out what quirk Shin had. It was a force of habit at this point, observing and analyzing quirks. Some were more obvious than others, and those that required activation couldn't be used in public. But he figured that at one point or another the doctor would slip. Looking back, Izuku was more than a little embarrassed due to that one time he thought Shin might have some sort of speed quirk, similar to Igninium's engine, which ended in disappointment and frustration upon looking down and realizing that no, Shin didn't have engine-esque quirk. He was in fact wearing fucking Heelys to work that day. The discovery explained a lot, thought Izuku. The unintentional flashes of something raw, sad, almost incomprehensible that vanished almost as soon as they appeared on the doctor's face whenever the subject of Izuku's quirklessness came up in their session. Izuku never brought it up. He didn't want to destroy the delicate balance they managed to establish since their third session when Shin's attempt at remaining professional went to shit. Nevertheless, as much as it explained a lot of things, it also left some questions. I don't get it, stated the boy. What do you mean? Asked the doctor. Why didn't you tell me before? I mean, think about it. My attitude at the beginning was even worse than now. You could have easily pulled the "I'm just like you" card out of your sleeve to gain my trust and get me to behave from the start. Why didn't you? The doctor chuckled at Izuku's comment. God, you make it sound like all psychiatrists are manipulative bastards, said Shin. Why are you booing me? You know I'm right. Manipulating your patients into feeling better about themselves and all that crap. That's some chaotic neutral shit right here, replied the boy. I guess you're not wrong. But to answer your question, I didn't want to use that against you. It felt like a cheap trick more than anything, and I prefer to work hard towards gaining my patient's trust. Besides, that would also put me in a vulnerable position, which could affect my approach towards your case, and believe it or not, I try to remain somewhat professional around here," explained Shin. "Professional, my ass." Indeed. Once again, the silence stretched within the confines of the doctor's office. It was comfortable. It felt like everything was said and done. "Shin, what? I'm going to miss you." The man didn't answer immediately, trying to process exactly what his patient has said, but as soon as he did, the small room was suddenly filled with uncontrollable laughter. "What's so funny, asshole?" shouted Izuku. "I'm having a moment here and you're ruining it." "I know, I can't believe you thought it was our last session." "Byohaha, what do you mean?" "Izuku, did you really think that we would just release a teenager with suicidal tendencies without any follow-up?" asked Shin, his laughter slowly subsiding. "After the discharge, you will have to come to follow-up sessions every other week since our sessions seem to improve your emotional state. And don't forget, you will have to come and see me anyway to have your prescription refilled every month." "When you say it like that, it does sound kinda dumb," admitted the boy. Once again, he let his insecurities get better of him and cloud his judgment, but he was glad he was wrong. "Great, now that your emotional crap was sorted out, let's focus on the important things," announced the doctor as he slipped into his gossip mode. "What happened to that sheep your dad brought to the hospital?" he asked. "Yeah, about that." "Trash Bandit is a terrible name," exclaimed the doctor in his "I'm tired of your bullshit" voice he used so often around Izuku. "Trash Bandit is a great name. I don't know what you're talking about," replied the boy in his usual sarcastic manner. The doctor sighs and gently slaps Izuku on the back of his head. "This bad boy can fit so many fucking bad ideas," he says while looking at the camera like he's in the office. "Izuku, honey, are you sure you didn't forget anything?" asks Inko as she packs the last of Izuku's belongings into his backpack. "Yes, Mom, I'm pretty sure. You took most of my stuff back home yesterday. I don't think we missed anything," replied Izuku. Truth being told, he was getting angsty, although his previous conversation with Shin calmed him down significantly. Now that it was actually time to leave, Izuku couldn't help but feel anxious. He felt like he was about to leave behind something important, and even the thought of bi-weekly visits offered little comfort in the current situation. There was also something bittersweet about the situation, thought Izuku. Were he a protagonist of a story, this would be the turning point for his character, the long-awaited new beginning, the arc of personal growth and learning how to live once more. But this is real life, so instead he's going to leave this place and continue to be bitter, because sue him, he has 14 years of bitterness to catch up on. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Ms. Saoji entered the room, followed by Dr. Iyashi holding a clipboard, poster child for a hardworking doctor. "I can proudly say that the past 6 weeks of your stay here has been one of the weirdest times of my life, and I've been to Florida," says the doctor in amusement as he starts to flip through the paperwork on his clipboard. "Thanks, I did my worst," replied the boy. "I'm sure you did," laughed the nurse. Inko looks fondly at her son's shenanigans. She hasn't seen him this happy and carefree since he was a child. She was so used to Izuku being quiet and withdrawn, the result of isolation due to his quirklessness. Had anyone asked Inko if she was upset that her child turned out quirkless, she would have said no in a heartbeat. She loved her boy unconditionally. It wasn't the lack of quirk that upset her, but her own inability to comfort her son and shield him from the cruel world that made him feel worthless. It was disheartening, knowing that he will struggle for the rest of his life, but Inko couldn't be happier, knowing that Izuku was on a way to recovery. "Mrs. Midoriya," called Dr. Iyashi, bringing the woman out of her thoughts. "Oh, I'm sorry, what is it?" "I just need you to sign those papers for Izuku's release. It's a bit of a useless formality since he's still underage. But you know how it is with bureaucracy," said the doctor dismissively as he handed Inko a pen and the papers. "Doctor, what is going to happen to Izuku now?" asked the woman. "In terms of his health plan, we're sticking to 8 milligrams of Rameltian, followed up by regular sessions once every 2 weeks to refill prescription and ensure the improvement of his mental well-being. I know that the school requires a good reason for switching to homeschooling, which is why I will send over all the necessary documents regarding Izuku's condition so you can present it as soon as possible." "Thank you, doctor, you really thought of everything. It's my job after all." "Your job, my ass. Now you're just playing favorites," shouted Izuku from across the room. "You sure think highly of yourself, don't you?" asked Shin. "You bet, I'm fucking precious." "Izuku, language. Sorry, Mom." Izuku and his mother were on their way to the reception after saying their goodbyes to most of the staff. Just as they were rounding up the corner to the elevator that didn't play any elevator music, Izuku suddenly remembered that there's still one person he needs to say goodbye to. He made a dash to room 315 and man, did it feel good to be back on your own legs. Without thinking, Izuku slammed the door open and screamed at the top of his lungs, startling the poor woman who occupied the room. "Mrs. Todoroki, I am going to miss you so much." "Izuku, don't scare me like this." "Sorry," murmured the boy, as he slowly stepped inside and sat on the chair facing the woman. For a while neither of them said anything. Izuku couldn't help but glance at the woman in front of him, remembering their first meeting at the rooftop, the thoughts of seeing a ghost stuck in the past, the knowledge of how far they have come since then. Who would have thought that on his way to recovery he'd end up with an eccentric, telenovela-loving psychiatrist, a sheep and a surrogate mother figure? So they're releasing you? She asked, breaking the silence, her voice solemn. Far too soon if you ask me, replied the boy with a humorless laugh. Don't say it like that. I'd love to be able to leave. It gets so boring around here, she pondered. Ever since you got here everything became more interesting. I've had more fun in those last few weeks with you than I did in all those years alone in this hospital. You're a good kid, Izuku, so please go and live a good life. Careful, Mrs. Todoroki. You're starting to sound like Shin, joked the boy. Mrs. Todoroki laughed and she leaned back on her bed, staring out of the window with a wistful look on her face. It was painfully reminiscent. I guess it's bound to happen after knowing someone for so long. I remember when I first came here. It's been almost 10 years, can you believe it? She asked without expecting an answer anyway. At the time I was admitted, Dr. Iyashi was a new doctor, straight out of residency. I was one of his first patients, so I suppose there's a bit of sentiment here. A lot of things changed in those 10 years. Patients came in and out, so did the staff, but Dr. Iyashi never changed. So what you're saying is Shin was bitchy on Maine since day one. Who's bitchy on Maine? Shin, Dr. Iyashi. Speaking of the devil, the doctor stood in the doorframe pretending to knock on the door, because manners. The man walked in and ruffled Izuku's hair, making it even more of a mess than usual, and what a shame, because it wasn't even a hot mess, just a regular mess. Sorry to interrupt your little goodbye, said the doctor as he nodded towards Mrs. Todoroki before addressing Izuku, but your mother came to the reception panicking, saying you suddenly ran off somewhere. I had a feeling you'd be here, and would you look at that? Izuku scoffed at Shin's smugness. This isn't a goodbye, he says. It's not, asked the woman. No, even after I leave I promise to come and visit you. You said you liked it when I was here, and I like hanging out with a lot too. It's like having a mom friend, which sounds weird, but whatever. Mrs. Todoroki stood up and engulfed the boy in a hug. I'm going to miss you as well. Please do come and visit this old woman from time to time, because I'm holding on to that promise. Don't worry, I'm not that easy to get rid of, murmured Izuku. Unfortunately, their heartwarming goodbye had to be interrupted by a nosy, tactless Shin. All right, get a move on you, gremlin. You've got people waiting for you, he chirped. See you in hell, Shin, replied the boy as he stood up, ready to leave the room. Oh yeah, and what are we gonna do there? Laughed the doctor. Try to dethrone Endeavor. The doctor received an answer in a form of Izuku's middle finger as the teenager retreated in the direction of the reception. The man scoffed at the gesture as he adjusted his glasses, while his patient laughed at their antics. Don't you get tired of bullying him all the time, Dr. Iyashi? Asked Mrs. Todoroki. Nah, this never gets old, mused Shin, and I told you to stop calling me Dr. Iyashi. How many times did we have this conversation, Mrs. Todoroki? I don't know. How many times did I tell you to stop calling me Mrs. Todoroki? Replied the woman. Touché. You're on first name basis with most of your patients. Most of my patients are brats, so no sense of formality is required. You, on the other hand, are one of the very few adults I treat, so I'd like to act like an adult with you. How about that, Ray? Asked the doctor with a mixture of sarcasm and amusement. Whatever you say, Shin. Izuku stepped out of the elevator that didn't play any elevator music and walked straight to the reception area where his mother was waiting for him with his backpack. Bless her soul. As he stepped closer, he noticed his mother talking to someone, anxiety written all over her face. As he got closer, one of the nurses that walked past him whispered a quick good luck while looking back in the direction of the reception, before returning to her duties. That confused Izuku even more, until he was face to face with the very last person he expected to see in the near future. Motherfucking bakugou. What in the ever-loving fuck are you doing here? Snapped Izuku, as both patients and nurses alike turned their heads at the commotion. Huh, what do you mean, what I'm doing here? Obviously I'm here to see you off, you shitty Deku, screamed Bakugou, always ready for a fight and for being kicked out of the hospital. See me off? You sure got a fucking nerve, Bakugou, sneered Izuku, putting emphasis on the blonde's name, as if it was something distasteful. While the two teenagers were busy with having a screaming match in the middle of the hospital entrance, an 80-year-old patient with far too little grasp on reality, as he seemed to believe this was a restaurant and not a hospital, started to shout at the reception as well. Can I get a waffle? Can I please get a waffle? Needless to say, the whole scene was pure chaos. No, you can't get a waffle. In fact, I will frame you for murder, shouted Izuku at the old man, because he hated being interrupted in the middle of screaming profanities at his bully. Deku, what the fuck? Boys, please, said Inko, as she stood between the two, trying to keep the situation under control. I know it's all a bit tense, but please try to be civil with each other, or at least take it outside. Bakugou and Izuku scoffed at each other as they nodded and moved towards the exit. That's when Izuku actually looked through the glass doors and noticed the weather. It's the end of May, so it's been very warm and sunny for the past few weeks. However, it seems as though the universe hated him, because on that day in particular the weather decided to be piss poor. Izuku, dressed in a tank top and a pair of shorts, was not having it. In frustration, he stomped over to the lost and found box in the reception area in hopes of finding something that will keep him warm. As he rummaged through the piles of clothes, he managed to pull out what can only be described as a brown trash bag with a faux fur around the hood. Perfect, he deadpans. The boy puts on the oversized coat and starts to walk towards the exit once again. His mother quickly told him that she'd go home with the rest of his things and will expect him back by dinner. Izuku made his way outside and found Bakugou with the most idiotic look on his face he has ever seen. The blonde hasn't noticed his arrival, as he was busy staring at the sheep that was patiently waiting by the entrance. Bandit. The sheep looks up as it recognizes its name and runs towards Izuku, who in turn starts to happily pet his four-legged companion. Their petting session was interrupted by a rather quiet "What the fuck?" coming from a very shocked-looking Bakugou. "The fuck are you looking at? It's a sheep." Now, here's Izuku's favorite part of the new game he's playing, the denial. Ever since they got Trash Bandit, Izuku and his mom would always say that it's a dog. Always, no matter what, just to see people's reactions. So far it provided a lot of confusion from their neighbors, but it seems as though Bakugou has yet to meet Bandit. "What are you talking about?" asked Izuku, pulling his best act of innocence and confusion. "Trash Bandit is a dog. It's a fucking sheep, look at it. It's just a very special dog, get over yourself." "Bah, did you hear it? You must be fucking with me. Bandit is bilingual. My dad got him abroad." Bakugou screamed as he started to pull at his hair in frustration. "For fuck's sake, Deku, are you trying to piss me off?" A moment of silence, and a slow, yet certain yes was enough to make him snap, his palms barely containing the explosions waiting to cause destruction. "You know," Izuku stated in a deadpan tone, "you always say how annoying I am, but trust me, you don't want to see me when I actually try to be, so get your shit together and let's get going. Explodo kill. We've got a lot to talk about." Izuku turned around and started walking away from the hospital, the sheep only a couple steps behind him. Bakugou scoffed, but followed his anyway, already feeling frustrated at having to walk behind Izuku, at having to follow a worthless Deku. He tried to shut those thoughts down. Ever since the incident, he had a lot of time to think about Izuku, himself, and ultimately all this superiority complex bullshit that led to this disaster in the first place. The fact that Izuku's dog was giving him a really creepy look just added salt to the wound. After a 10-minute walk, they have found themselves sitting on a bench in a rather empty park. Usually the place was full of life and people, but it seems as though the weather kept them away. Izuku and Bakugou both had their hoods up to shield themselves from the rain, while Trash Bandit sat under the bench itself, managing to stay mostly dry. They haven't spoken at all since leaving the hospital, neither knowing how to, nor willing to make the first move. "What the fuck are we doing?" asked Bakugou, contemplating how he managed to find himself sitting in some empty-ass park, getting drenched and having to talk to Izuku. Sure, it was originally his own idea to go and see him in the first place since he was finally getting released, but that didn't make the whole situation any easier. "We're trying to have a conversation about our feelings and resolve some of our bullshit, like emotionally stable people that we aren't," replied Izuku, refusing to look at the blonde. "Alright, you fucking nerd. Talk feelings to me," shrugged Bakugou. "Do you ever think before you speak? Or do you just get off on making me miserable?" asked Izuku, trying to keep his voice neutral, not wanting to provoke the other and start a fight without at least sorting things out first. "Or do you just not care about others at all? For someone as self-centered as you sure as hell don't think about how your actions can affect the others." "Why should I care about people who are in my way? They're all just a bunch of extras, just some pebbles to walk over on my way to becoming a hero," spat Bakugou, painfully aware of how awful the things he says are. But he's been saying them so long that they've become a mantra, something hard to break away from. "Going by your logic, you imply that somehow I'm in your way, but how? You've spent the better part of the last decade telling me how worthless I am, how I can't do anything, how I will never become a hero, never accomplish anything. Yet if all of that were true, you'd just ignore me, like you do with most people," said Izuku, growing slightly suspicious, feeling like he's close to hitting nail on the head. "Instead, you act hostile towards me, you lash out, degrade me, tell me how worthless I am, but really who are you trying to convince with those words? Me or yourself?" asked Izuku, feeling smug at being able to say all of those things in Bakugou's face. Few weeks ago he would have been scared shitless, but after his encounter with Endeavor, who's a walking pile of trash on fire, Bakugou is like an angry marshmallow in comparison. "Huh, what kind of bullshit are you spouting? You sure think highly of yourself," shouted Bakugou defensively. "Says you," sneered Izuku. The freckled boy sighed in defeat. They were getting nowhere with this. Sure, he was more than happy to spend the rest of the day antagonizing Bakugou to let off some steam, but ultimately it would lead to nothing. He looked over at the angry blonde, wanting to talk things through, to get across his feelings of frustration, hopelessness, and defeat, but not knowing how. You know what's the worst part in all of this? He asked. What? I used to look up to you so much that it's almost embarrassing, says Izuku. Almost bitterly, like he was admitting to the worst mistakes of his life. You were my best friend, my only friend. We used to play heroes and villains together. We promised each other that we'd become heroes together. And I mean, sure, with the whole quirkless thing the plan went to shit. And I was in denial for a long-ass time. But for fuck's sake, did you really have to kick a man when he's down? Shouted Izuku, frustrated with bakugou, with himself, and with everything else in between. Why did you have to do it, Katsuki? I didn't ask to be born quirkless. You don't understand how hard it is to live with this diagnosis. Why did you have to make it worse? Screamed Izuku as he grabbed onto bakugou in rage and shook him back and forth. This isn't fair. Well, maybe that's because life isn't fucking fair, shouted bakugou, as he headbutted Izuku out of sheer rage, which definitely wasn't one of his best ideas. Both teenagers groaned in pain at the impact, as bakugou rubbed at his forehead to relieve the pain. Izuku kicked him off the bench in retaliation. The blonde fell into a puddle with a loud splash and an even louder Deku. What the fuck? Maybe you're right. Maybe life isn't fair, said Izuku, unusually calm for someone ready to start a fight in the rain like a washed-out hero. But ain't that what heroes are for? To make the world a little bit more fair. Ain't that what you wanted to become as much as I did? Izuku stood up from the bench, rubbing on his forehead as well. After the weeks at the hospital, the bandages on his head were finally removed, exposing a nasty scar at his left temple. The anger that bakugou felt instantly vanished as his eyes zeroed in on the scar, a reminder of the very fall that haunted him in his nightmares. I might not be a hero material, Kaken, but neither are you. So see you in hell, asshole. And with that, Izuku turned around, ready to walk away and leave this trainwreck of a friendship behind. Trash Bandit, who was busy chewing on bakugou's trousers unnoticed, got up as well, ready to follow his human home. You wait. What now? Whined Izuku, but he turned back nevertheless. The blonde hesitated for a moment, as if trying to assess whether the situation was worth saving. I never actually apologized to you for all that crap I did. Listen, don't get me wrong. I ain't apologizing to you now, Deku, you hear me? He shouted. Izuku considered his words for a moment, not really understanding where all of this was going. You're wasting my time. I'm fucking getting to it, shithead, sneered bakugou. But what you said last time, you were right, about me having issues and stuff. Well, aren't we a fucked up bunch? Laughed Izuku. Don't fucking interrupt me, Deku. I'm trying to make a point. You're fucking right. I've been an asshole to you. I still think you're annoying as hell, but that didn't give me the right to say all those things. So I'm gonna try to get my shit together, you know. What you said back then made me realize that at this point I don't have what it takes to be a hero, so I want to sort all of my crap out. And once I do, then you can expect a proper apology, announced the blonde as he pointed his finger at Izuku in what seemed to be a challenge. He would have been impressed if it wasn't for the fact that bakugou was still sitting in a puddle. With all said and done, the blonde stood up with as much dignity as one could have when they were drenched from head to toe and walked off in the opposite direction to where they came from. How peculiar. So, this is it, huh, bandit? Asked Izuku as he looked down at the sheep, not really expecting an answer. Here he was, standing like an idiot in an empty park, drenched like a rat, the conflict with his ex-childhood friend still unresolved, and on top of that he's now talking to a sheep. Fucking brilliant. What an unsatisfactory bitch of a situation. With that, Izuku turns around and walks back in the direction of his home, holding on to the uncertainty of the future with one hand and the hope for a better life with the other. There's still a lot that needs to be said and done, but for now he wants to take life one day at a time, focusing on the homeschooling and his therapy. And who knows, maybe one day he can actually become a great person, one that will bring change in a lot of people's lives. Now he needs to get home and burn all of his All Might merch.